Hi Sam, how you going? We're here in Fawcett today
You
in the
are?
hall, and it's actually my first time being in Fawcett, which I'm quite disappointed to say because it's a beautiful part of the world. But unfortunately, we're here because 6 months ago there was a fire that made its way from the Hume Highway just south of Longwood, right the way up onto the Tablelands, past Ruffy, down all the way to Yark, and then across to Fawcett here, and continued on to Alexandra. And we're just going to be talking today about what's, from your perspective, important to cover. Where would you like to kick off? You've drawn a picture here in front of me.
I have drawn a picture because so much has happened and it's very hard to remember things. So I've got like a little folder of prompts and so forth. I think for me and for people who are watching your YouTube and listening to you, Max, thank you for having me on. Fawcett is about 14 k's northeast of Alexandra. Historically, the hall has been here since 1882. It was built by the communities of Fawcett and Corriella for the community. It is Crown land, and we've got a beautiful long history because, as you would see in the back here, you can see we're unlined. And the reason, I think part of the reason that we're unlined is that we still have all the builders' signatures on the weatherboard. So over in that corner by the little fire hydrant extinguisher thingy, there are signatures, which I can show you later, Max. But it's got a lot of beautiful history. We've only been here 25 years, so I'm not really a local because we've got generational families in our road. And in our district that have been here, 3 and 4 and 5 generations. So there's a lot of history here, which is lovely. And I think we've got a really nice mix of local people who are either self-employed, generational farmers, part-time farmers, hobby farmers, self-employed business owners, or they might work locally. Some have got families, some are self-funded retirees, some have got adult children, some have got really young families. So it's quite a nice mix of country values, but a real eclectic mix of people, walks of life, all of that thing. And we're close to Alex, and we're close to Mansfield. We're only 40 minutes from Mansfield. And yes, I did draw you a picture of our road because where we're situated, so we've got Maroondah Highway at both ends. Mm-hmm. And if you come in from Alexandra, you turn right up Spring Creek Road, and we're about 6.5 kilometres up at the hall. Yep. The day of the fire, it's my understanding, because I'd evacuated and was watching everything on cameras. We didn't have that luxury in 2009, which was our last really large fire that I suppose affected us locals quite a lot, either indirectly or directly. But back in 2009, it was really about what the media were putting out over Channel 7 and over the radio and over UGFM, which is our local community radio, who are legends, keeping us all up to date with what's happening. This time UGFM was a big part of that, but we were all connected as much as a community through Messenger, through our own cameras. A lot of us were watching things as they progressed through our cameras, which we did, like I said, we didn't have that luxury in 2009. So it's my understanding, and seeing footage from my partner and from our Corriella Fire Brigade, that they attempted to save the bridge 4 times. It's got heavy-duty steel underneath, but it is timber. It's a timber bridge. So the handrail has been damaged on both sides. The timbers have been heavily impacted. I noticed when I pulled up, you went out and had a look, so you would have seen how bad the timber is. Yep. And in a way, what we would like here as a community is that bridge to be replaced. Government is telling me in a roundabout way that they don't really want to replace it. They want to repair it. But the issue being, if we repair that bridge, it's not going to last the next 50 years. It's not fit for purpose in its current state, whether it be repaired or it's, of course it's fire damaged. And the reason is our community have grown. We've gone from being larger farming properties down to lots of individual little properties, but we've also got a couple of big pastoral companies, and they need to be able to get the larger trucks, the larger grain trucks and stuff across that bridge, and at the moment they can't do that. So it's costing them 4 times as much to get that grain or that hay or that amount of stock put onto smaller trucks to get through the ford with the culverts underneath it, that the council have done and they're maintaining all the time. So recently, because when are we taping? We're in July. Recently we just had a rain of weather event that actually saw that bridge go, that crossing go underwater. And you know the dangers of driving through floodwater. And we don't know what's down in Stony Creek, which runs into Spring Creek, which runs into the Goulburn. We don't know what's coming down here because all of us have been impacted by fire. So there are gates and old bits of machinery and all sorts of things. And most people who live in the country understand that when you get flash flooding, it's like a jet engine. And the creek roars. So this was coming down here at 1 million miles an hour and coming across. And so VicPol Council assessed it in the rain event that we had last week and closed it for 24 to 72 hours just so that we could get the water level to go down to assess underneath. But in effect, we actually isolated or cut our community into 2. And this is how much we rely on this little single lane bridge. And we would actually like to see a dual lane that has a higher weight limit so that when we're rebuilding houses up here, we can get trusses across, we can get machinery across.
Yeah.
So this bridge is a big part of our community here. The reason I've drawn you this map is because Spring Creek Road goes up through the culvert, our temporary crossing at the moment, and then comes up to what we call United Kingdom Gap. And essentially from the basis of United Kingdom Gap up to the top where Murrindindi Shire joins Mansfield Shire, it's technically a fire track. It's a single lane, pretty rough as guts track. Now, if we have a storm and trees go down this top half here and the bridge is inaccessible, these people in here are totally isolated. We can't get emergency vehicles into them. We can't get anything. The only thing you could get in is potentially a helicopter. So this is our concern as a local community, that we need this upgraded fairly quickly. And here we are in winter. We are 6 months down to the day since the fires, and we've still had no real movement on the bridge. So that's disappointing. That's disappointing to me as a resident and disappointing to me as president of Fawcett Hall, because this infrastructure here, even though it is council owned, it's a community asset because we use it every day. We get 150 cars a day. You add in a long weekend, or if the lake is full, people are driving through because Google Maps has decided that this does cut off 40 minutes, so people come through. Yeah. We have all types of traffic that come through here, and even though the signs at this end and this end say, not suitable for caravans and so forth, people still bring their caravans through. Yeah. So the United Kingdom Gap is a bit of a concern because it does cut through a mountain, and people would understand if they look back in the history books or read our old Fawcett Hall book that we effectively, our hills are made of quartz, so digging through this is not really an option. All we can do is maintain it, and the actual track is getting thinner in width all the time because of all the water that comes down from the mountain that you drive up through, or the United Kingdom Gap. So this is the reason I've drawn that little picture, so that you have a bit of an understanding that we are a little bit vulnerable here to the elements without this bridge. Yeah.
So that bridge
is a priority for our community.
And it's currently made of timber.
Yeah, that's right. Huge, big pieces of timber that have been there for a very long time and tinder dry.
And it's supported by some
steel
long sections that are supported by timber sort of trestles.
Yes,
that are
that's
underneath.
right.
And yeah, the idea of a dual lane,
Or even a lane and a half. It doesn't have to be super fancy
Yeah.
because it's the weight load. We
Yeah.
need to be able to get the bigger trucks across. We need to get the waste truck across without the guy going, am I going to get across?
you got scrap metal removal from
Yeah,
destroyed
exactly right.
structures.
And they're having to bring in smaller trucks. And I see them. They slow down here before they go through the crossing, and you can see they're weighing up in their heads whether or not they're going to get their trucks through.
And also for the Shire to maintain, you know, the infrastructure either side of the bridge, just for efficiency. There's some quarries back here on the Mansfield side of the Maroondah, and ruling them out as gravel sources probably has a bit of a added expense. So it seems like a really practical thing. We're sitting in the hall now and it's probably 50 metres, if that.
Yep.
It'd be 35, 40 metres from here, and really is right in the centre
It
of the
is.
community and
Yep.
splits.
It does. It splits the community into two.
Yeah.
The other night when we closed the bridge, we technically had about 9 to 10 people that were totally isolated.
Wow.
And I know it's only one of 55 bridges. I can show you a map, if I can find it, of all the bridges that were damaged in our immediate area. And I know in the big scheme of things, it's only one of 55 bridges, because I'm including the rail trail bridges, because I don't know whether you noticed coming here today. Did you look on the sides of the
I
road?
did, yeah.
Yeah, the rail trail bridges don't look happy at all.
Yep.
So you can see here on this map, here's Fawcett Hall. The other bridges that are a concern are the McVie Bridge, the Mullaroo, and the Newman's Bridge, potentially the Newman Bridge, because we do have a family that live on this side, and that bridge is totally burnt. So they are the same. They've got a river crossing, and when that floods, they're totally isolated. There is no way they can get off that property. And most of us, anybody that's lived here more than 10 years, understands the flooding. So you know you're going to potentially have to hunker down for a couple of days until it drops. But to me, I don't understand why the process and the money hasn't been forthcoming in a faster, more practical way, because it seems like we have just put in so many more processes, and those processes are more important than progress. That worries me as a resident, because we are talking about people's lives here. We're not talking about we need a $12 million bridge. We're looking at under $1 million to get these bridges done, and we're going around in circles, it seems.
And yeah, I guess it's probably an issue of understanding the situation and then having priorities. You know, we've got a recovery effort, a rebuild process that needs to happen, and one of the enablers for this community is that bridge. Gives you choices, gives you options, increases efficiency, and I guess it's a way of, you know, there was a lot of things that happened that maybe we would have liked to play out in a different way. It might be a good way of reaching out and saying, look, this is actually a responsibility of government, this bridge, and its provision, and yeah, certainly seems like a
Well,
glaring
local
and
government
obvious
don't
thing.
have the money, so they have to go to state, they have to go to federal. And look, I understand there's processes and there's rules and regulations and checks and balances to go through, but you would think in a disaster that those processes could be streamlined to say maybe a 10-point checklist, make it simple. The poor teams at local government that have to work on applications for every single bridge, and there's 55 of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it does my head in. 55 assets have to be replaced, repaired.
And making them fire resilient is probably why you're at it.
That's right. Why would we replace timber? Are we going to get another fire? We didn't think 2009 was going to happen. You're in the CFA. What do you think? I mean, it happens.
Access is everything. And
That's right.
once you take access away from a community, you're
vulnerable.
you reduce its mobility.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
You actually, in certain cases, can basically negate the positive impact certain assets can have. All your ground assets get locked down
That's
until
right.
you can gain access.
That's
So,
right. And I mean, you look at all the other complexities that come into this: ages, abilities.
Yep.
It just, and one thing that I noticed was the majority of the men folk in our region here all have four-wheel drives or higher up utilities. What do the women drive? SUVs and lower to the ground.
Yeah.
So while our men folk would probably be game enough to drive through at a pinch, the women folk were like, no.
Yeah, and just looking at it, we're talking probably maybe a 20-metre span.
It's
from
not a lot.
abutment to
It's-
abutment.
That's right. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
The other day we did have the test. Our local fire captain said, I'm going to take the truck out and see if I can get through. He got through, but thankfully our little Corriella Fire Brigade team have got, I suppose, the knowledge of driving around our local roads. And yes, whilst we've got a 34-year-old truck, which needs to be updated, it does quite well on tricky ground. But if that was up to a metre and a half, how do you get the truck through?
It's quite unfortunate. I mean, it looks, for an engineer, that looks like quite a fun challenge to look around the area at different contractors that might have solved certain problems recently. Seems super achievable. It's unfortunate that there's no progress at
Yeah,
all.
we've had early days where we were talking things about Bailey bridges. Do you know what a Bailey bridge is? No. Okay, so it's where, and don't come at me, people. I'm sure there'll be people that will come and correct me, but essentially I think a Bailey's bridge, in very simple terms, is like a bit of a Lego bridge that the army bring their own engineers in and they put it in together in sections, which means it can be as big or as wide as they need it to be because it all interlocks. And these bridges can be put in anywhere and they take the weight of a tank.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think when we talked about it in January, February, the footings were the issue at that time. And I think maybe, I don't have this in writing and I'm only surmising, but I think the hope was that funding was going to come through. And it hasn't. So we've sort of doubled back on the Bailey's Bridge. We are talking about that as a community more at the moment. But it's in the lap of the gods at the moment.
It's really unfortunate to hear that. I mean, this is a very practical sort of solution probably to a problem that's
That's
quite
right.
obvious.
If you could put a Bailey's Bridge in here, it would take the pressure off all the work that's got to be done to reassign their bridge here. It would allow our community access and confidence and reduce the anxiety levels while this gets done. And the army, as you know, don't stuff about. Once they get told that they've got to go, the bridge would be in.
Seems like a good...
And they bring everything, they do everything, set it up, walk away, job's done, mic drop, done.
So what do we feel is going on when we have... I would consider that, seriously, I'm an earth mover in my own a business, and I think that's quite a straightforward problem. How is it possible that, given your experience, that the brakes can come on in such a way that 6 months on, there's no prospect of really a solution that the community can have confidence in? How is it possible?
I don't know how it is possible. I think, as I said before, the process is way too involved. Surely you would think, like if you, and I've been running a business all my life. When you're a small business owner, you have to be able to be flexible you have to be able to, and I hate the word pivot because we used it in COVID, but you would think that to take the pressure off, why would you not look at a temporary solution? And to their credit, local government did.
Yep.
They came in, they dug through, their machines were out here very early days after the fire, they dug through the riverbed and they made us a smooth crossing. And that was fantastic because we didn't have rain.
Yep.
But we were all starting to get twitchy about March, April, because we knew as locals this could end badly as far as a washout. So then we had our first little instance of rain, and then the call was made to put the culverts in. And to their credit, council did that virtually in 2 days. The call went out the day before for the culverts, they arrived, and then the local teams and the contractors got in there and did it. And they made it look Mickey Mouse. It looked beautiful. But what was concerning, and I was a disbeliever, I actually had the engineer from council out here and I said, okay, you're going to have to explain to us lesser beings, why have you put small culverts in and not massive culverts? Because that's what the community wanted, really. Because then we got it built over the top of it and we could have had really a temporary fix for some time. And the rationale was around the smaller the culvert, the smaller the blockage, the easier it is to unplug it. That was the rationale. And look, to me, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Because why? We've got massive culverts on bridges on our property. And when they get plugged up, it is a job and a half. It's tractors, it's chains, it's a lot of stress. Whereas when it's a small culvert, you don't have as much to unplug. But it's not what the community at the end of the day wanted.
Yeah.
We were happy that council did it because it got us immediate access, but we want a bridge.
Yeah.
Very simple.
And just sort of maybe in this instance, just looking for government, and I do say government because we have obviously
It's all levels.
local, state
Yeah.
and federal, and then every department in between really working together practically and efficiently just to deliver a solution. But that seems to be really difficult, doesn't it?
It does. There seems to be, and I could be entirely wrong, Max, but I think state government forget that local government here, especially in Murrindindi, and I've seen other shires, Murrindindi works very closely with its local communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
So-
understand. You know, they were out here first couple of days after the fires. They got it.
Yeah.
You know, local government here, 50% of their teams were directly affected. So they understood and they got it. And for some of the senior staff members, it wasn't their first rodeo. They'd been through the 2009 fires, and they're the ones that I elected to work with. They're the ones that I said to our CEO, these are the 5 people I will work with from your council, because they get it. I don't have to explain. They move fast. They make decisions. We get on with it. But I think state government don't understand that this local government work with their community, so they actually understand the pain.
Yeah.
They've all driven through it. They've all seen it. All taken photos. It's all part of the bridge audit. They know exactly what's going on, and we as a community know what's going on, and they're keeping in constant contact with us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
I got a text today about the
Yeah.
roadworks,
impressive. Yeah.
so that I can let my community know that there's going to be roadworks up there.
Yeah.
Because United Kingdom Gap has copped it brutally since January. We've had storms, we've had bushfire. This road, this section here, the fact that it's still traversable is just absolutely amazing, because you talk about the distance, the width of the river crossing here, wait till you get up to there.
Yeah, right.
It's getting a bit thin.
Yeah.
And it's got deep channels either side that are filled with rocks that have got running water in it. And if you get you or four-wheel drive down into the side there, unless you're a very experienced driver and know exactly how to get up, you get stuck.
Wow.
So yeah, I think state government don't understand that there is not a disconnect between the local community and the local government, that we're very well connected.
And that's probably and correct me if I'm wrong, but for Murrindindi, that's probably because it's essential. The level of service the Shire's able to provide to the community will be so much less if they weren't integrated the way they are.
That's right. I mean, our mayor was on a fire truck the day of the fires, jumped off, took the bloody uniform off, put a suit on and stood in front of media. I don't know too many other shires that actually have that level of understanding between their local government elected reps and their community. We're very fortunate in that, because I hear and I see other communities that were bushfire affected where there is a disconnect between the council and their community.
Yeah, sure.
And that saddens me, because without their support here at local government level, we wouldn't have been able to get half of the stuff done that we needed to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when the CEO turns up with an armful of cooked chickens from the supermarket on a potluck dinner when she wasn't invited, she just turned up. First thing she does is walk in, say hello to everybody, hands out hugs, and then she's in the kitchen for 4 hours. It just shows you the level of commitment to your community.
Yeah.
I don't know too many other CEOs that do that.
No, it's quite impressive.
It's very impressive.
It's a lot of this is signalling understanding.
That's right.
Yeah.
And compassion, and actually understanding that your local residents and ratepayers are humans too.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be something I'll be paying close attention to, and really, hopefully, come next March or April, the concern isn't there because it's solved. Yeah.
I think through every national disaster, people look at governments through a totally different lens. They look at reactiveness, things that are actually happening on the ground, the ability to understand people's stories. Even through the inquiry, because I put my hand up to be part of the parliamentary inquiry, because, and I think that's where you and I are quite similar, Max, that we need good policy. And when I was working for state government many years ago, I was involved in some policy changes, and it hit me like a ton of bricks back then that the policy makers at that stage, and we're talking a long time ago now, had a lot of experience in policy. And the ones that were doing extremely well with policy adjustments or writing new policies were the ones that actually rolled their sleeves up and got out in their communities, knocked on doors and asked questions, took notes, took that back and helped formulate great policy. Because when you look at the policies that are not working and you really strip them down to bare bones and you look at them and you think, well, what was the community consultation to build that policy? And then when you ask and there's crickets around the room, that tells you. And I think that's the reason I thought I wanted to be involved in the parliamentary inquiries, because there were a few key people that I won't name that were part of that inquiry that I felt have the ability to influence good policy writing.
Yeah.
Some are babes in the woods, some are older babes in the woods, but I just thought, if we don't stand up as a community and tell our stories and hope for change, what hope do we have?
Yeah.
Because this fire, there was so much that went wrong on so many different levels, and it's quite complex, and you and I probably would not be able to solve it in one meeting.
Yeah.
But the fact that we've got that opportunity to partake in potentially influencing future policy is a little exciting to me on the back of a disaster, because I don't know about you, Max, but I don't want to see this happen again. We've had the biggest fire on private land. We weren't ready for it. Nobody was. But we've learnt nothing from 2009, where we went through a Royal Commission.
And I guess I'll turn I'll bring in a little bit of a different perspective. I've watched, I'm a CFA volunteer.
Yep.
And the last 17 years, I've been a firefighter. Pretty much that entire time, I've watched good people employed by organisations and good people as volunteers consistently not be able to maybe have their best ideas really be seen and come to action.
Or at worst, they've walked away out of frustration.
We have lost many people probably through being disenfranchised, enormous efforts, decades-long officer positions, for example, or even employment in different organisations, and they've got the answers or part of the solution. Something we talk about when we talk about these sorts of calamities is the idea of Swiss cheese. So when all the holes line up and we end up with the worst of outcomes, this is a situation where we need to reduce the gaps as much as possible. And I'm quite astonished as to how we can end up in a situation with all the experience we have with still so many holes in incredibly practical changes. I noticed something over this side of the hill. I'm from the Euroa side, and the vegetation arrangement is very different. We experienced a total lack of manoeuvrability in our area because it was a constant battle of driving. We ended up just driving through paddocks for a week or so, just until we could get our roads open.
Yep.
Which meant the impact was so much greater. Houses and sheds lost.
Yep.
So individuals losing their houses is horrific to even consider. But then you lose your tools in your shed.
That's
all
right.
The things you might do and need to rebuild or help someone else
That's right.
rebuild. And these are incredibly practical changes, much like your bridge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had so many generational farmers here that saved their houses but lost their sheds. And when you've lost 4 generations of tools in your shed, you can't just go to Jenkins or to Bunnings and buy them and replace them.
Yeah.
Some of these tools over the years have been particularly manufactured or handmade to suit a certain thing or to do a certain purpose, and you've lost all of that. And I agree. I think when you look across the whole Longwood region, you put a tree down on a couple of roads, you're right. How is the CFA even supposed to respond to all of that without getting through?
It's a safety issue. Something that did sort of present to me was, what if we needed more ambulances? What if we needed more emergency health? The situation was what it was, and there was some serious incidents, but we could have had far more medical situations.
We had a great exercise happen here, probably about, I think, week 2 or 3. So no power, no comms, hall full of people. One of our local residents dislocated his shoulder, managed to get into his ute, managed to drive to the hall. We had nurse on the run here. We were doing some medical health checks and so forth. He pulled up at the front gate. I went racing out because I could hear him screaming my name, and I thought, oh my God, what's happening? I thought he'd had a heart attack because he was clutching his chest. I didn't know what. So I ripped open the door and he said, shut the door, it's my shoulder. And I'm like, oh my God. So I shut the door and he said, can you ring 000, get me an ambulance? And I said, yep. I couldn't ring 000.
I pulled up here just before, and I noticed as I was driving in, I realised I'd lost reception.
Yeah, that's right. We're in a Telstra black site. We have Starlink on the roof.
Yep.
Do you know the only way I could get a call out?
Yeah.
I put it up on Facebook.
You're kidding. Yeah.
No. So I said, Caucasian white male, approximately 70, dislocated shoulder, need an ambulance to Fawcett Hall. Can't ring out. Now, Triple O on that day received hundreds of calls because of all our followers saw the message and said, look, we'll ring Triple O for you. Thankfully, we had nurse on the run. Cassandra just organised and immobilised the entire hall to look after this gentleman. In the end, we couldn't get the ambulance in. We couldn't get anybody in because of all the trees and the dangerous road. So then our fire captain got in the fire truck, drove down to the end of the road and came back. Not only did he come back with an ambulance and a Mica ambulance, but he also came back with Vic Police, because Vic Police were watching all this unfold through the Triple O system and going, what's going on at Fawcett Hall? So in the end, we had a cast of thousands here, but that just demonstrated to me, if we had had all of that happening on the day of the fire, like you said, it would have been a far worse outcome. I mean, it's pretty crappy now, but how would we have handled little individual incidences like that?
And I guess it's a case of controlling what you can control.
That's right.
Something, as I was watching the fire burn through Ruffy and Gurram, in my experience, was I realised how critical preparation is. How many things can you put in place, and ideally, systems and the paperwork side of things as well, but with your training, but physical, reliable structures and architectures that just allow you to manoeuvre in that landscape. How critical that is, because I was just watching our options disappear, and when that starts to happen, it's difficult to retain your composure.
Yep.
Because you're starting to think, hang on, am I going to be able to get out of where I am? Where can I get water from, for example?
That's right.
You start to get distracted, in a sense, by safety concerns, which you don't know whether or not you're founded in those concerns or not, because circumstance will dictate whether or not you're validated in those concerns. It's just a chance sort of thing. And I guess that for the community, our roads probably are, our bridges.
A big part of how we function.
Can we trust?
Yeah, that's
our
right.
infrastructure to a point? You
That's
can
right.
have circumstances where,
That's right.
unimaginable things happen, and you go, chances of that happening where we couldn't have predicted it, but what can we actually control? And having a focus on that preparation, because I would assume in that initial relief stage that you experienced, being able to be mobile, being able to call for help as you did was so difficult. The
That's
rest
right.
of the world's functioning.
That's right. They're all going about their own way. I mean, I often think about that first week when I put the call out, because I got back on the Monday, but I'd virtually sort of set everything in motion remotely from Hillsville before I got back here. So I knew I had the committee's blessing to open the hall and do whatever I could. But I walked back in here with no comms, no power, no flushing toilets, no availability of water, no comms. And in a very short amount of time, when I put the call out, this is what I need, how I can still remember Stuart from council got through. I don't know how he got through, but I turned up at the hall and there was kilos and boxes and slabs of water. And I thought, we've got water. This is good. I need generators. We're scratching around. We got generators hooked up. We at least got comms on so we could get Starlink on. So that was the next big thing. And then people started donating generators. And I can remember we sort of almost set up like a daisy chain of generators, because one generator was not going to make everything here work. Yeah. Like all the freezers had to be emptied and the fridge had to be emptied. And then we got the fridge on. And I can remember just the bliss Because at home we've got solar, and even though our solar was fried, because Bernard exhausted every skerrick of the batteries to save the house and the cattle and the hay,
Yeah.
we could still limp, but it was really badly limping. But at least we had a fridge at home. And it was so hot.
Yeah.
You know, it was 39-degree days and stuff, but we got water comms on, and when a local electrician came in and said, what is with all these generators? And I'm out of the timestamp at the moment because a lot had happened in between that time, but
Yeah.
he brought in a big generator and we were able to unhook all the little ones and hand the little ones out because we'd handed out so many generators. But we were able to, you know, by week 3, have the hall really functioning. We had fridges, freezers, you name it here, so we could feed people. Because I didn't want people to have to worry about food. They had enough to worry about. You know, my partner spent 14 days on his tractor digging in dead stock, pulling trees off fences for people just so they got access into their properties and so forth. Nobody had a tractor. All the tractors had burnt, so they couldn't feed out hay. We had no hay. Some of our smaller people were getting turned away from hay depots. So I called in favours from the Western Districts from family members that I'd spoke to for some time. They got hay to Yea, and then I'd ask Corella Fire Brigade if they'd go over to Yea, escort it in, because it was still a registered fire ground. We had stumps burning everywhere. And like today you've driven in and you were part of it, so you understood, but everything that you see that is green was black or dirt.
I think.
Or brown.
Yeah,
and you look at it now, Max, and you must have thought that, because we all do when we drive down the road, oh, they're green. It's good.
It's a wicked thing.
It is a wicked
the
thing.
Green, because it's great to see the soil, you know,
Come
and
back.
vegetation rebounding.
Oh,
for
and the
sure.
capeweed. Come on, don't forget the capeweed.
Plenty of capeweed. And you sort of think, but it is wicked because all the fencing, all the plumbing, any other bit of infrastructure.
It's all gone.
Anything that was laying in the grass is
It's
now
all gone.
tangled in grass.
Or it's
so
burnt beyond recognition. Fubard, as I like to call it. It's an old movie reference.
You've got some hazard that you'll come across with a slasher or a plough in the future or a rotary hoe that'll get all tangled up because you didn't get time to get there to tidy it up while the ground didn't have the vegetation. And it's a really cruel thing. And I guess you were talking about the practical nature of dispatching that feed and getting it out about without tractors.
That's
so
right.
your whole logistics system's changed.
We were pushing it by hand onto trailers, anything, you know. Bernard was on his tractor all the whole time, because I don't know if you've ever heard screaming stock.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. When they're hungry and all their grass is burnt, they scream. They stand in their paddocks and they bellow.
And we're looking for water.
Yeah, that's right.
And it probably brings us back to your bridge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
How
does.
much that.
We had to get unimogs filled full of hay.
Yeah. So the whole process becomes so much more difficult.
Oh, it's logistics. At the end of the day, it was logistics. So for me, in my head, it was getting the hauler mobilised, helping as many people. So everybody that walked through that door had a challenge. So how do we fix that challenge? I can't get to the bank. Okay, here is a voucher. What do you need? Do you need food or fuel? And then the ones that weren't presenting, I went and door knocked. And I did. I door knocked for the first 3 days to find out who had come back in, who had evacuated, who needed what. Some people had evacuated and just want things turned off at their house. Sam, when we left pumps on. Can you please go and check? So that was that. Sam, I don't know if my horses are alive. Can you go and check, please? We're missing a cow. Have you seen a cow? Sam, our entire herd has disappeared. And that's what we did. We had to put eyes on the ground because a lot of people couldn't get through. And then with the roadblocks, it was extremely hard, especially if you weren't a full-time resident, because your licence didn't tell the story when you came through a checkpoint.
Yeah.
I have 400 acres there and I have stock. I need to get through and check.
Your license mightn't be registered to that address.
That's right. And who's
on
going to
Spring
quickly
Creek
find a
Road.
rates notice before they head out the door in a panic to come up here to see if everything is okay, to find out? And we were talking about the green before. I often say to people, look past that boundary fence. There's no internal fences.
Do you see any stock?
Yeah, that's right. We haven't got 100% of stock returned. We have got a few. I was very excited and very emotional the day that neighbours bought their cattle back. Again, couldn't do it in one truckload.
Yeah. And
So they bought one big truckload here. They had to unpack their cattle or unload their cattle, walk them across, get them through, walk them up to their property because they couldn't get the trucks through.
Yeah.
And that was hard. I was emotionally really happy to see that, but I was also quite upset that they weren't able to do what they normally do because we don't have a damn bridge. But anyway, it worked, but it's another barrier to recovery. And that bridge is pivotal to our northern part of our community because they have a right, just like everybody else, to get back to their new sense of normal.
Yeah.
And our new sense of normal is dealing with stock that constantly get out because there's no fences, internal fencing that hasn't been put up, accessing contractors, accessing, especially if you're underinsured or uninsured, fencing materials. That's been a big focus of mine through the hall, where I've got 3 rounds of fencing. Opportunities for local landowners, and hearing stories of people saying, I've got $100,000 worth of fencing to do and I abut onto government-owned land and they've capped what they're going to contribute to $5,000.
And I guess that's probably
That
yeah.
it's just there's just a multitude of barriers to recovery.
And I guess from people listening in that mightn't be interacting with the fire ground is why does it matter? A lot of people might, the thought might cross their mind, that's a challenge you need to deal with. You need to find a way to get past the bridge and then you go on about feeding the stock and so on. But I guess my perspective would be the roads are something that government should be able to lock onto and say, all right, our job is to get good vehicle access around the fire ground. We're going to set up a set of priorities here, and that's our job, is to do that as government. We're not treating anyone in a privileged manner. We're just providing a service that should already be there. And another example of it might be, a reserve or government-owned bit of land, like you say, with the fencing. That's an area where government really can go, hang on, this is an area of obvious responsibility. We should be supporting. That, for some reason, seems to be a consistent theme, and something that probably needs to change, because I heard many times the question, what is it that you need? It might be from someone in a department or a level of government, and your head nearly just boggles because you think, I need often it's not a question you can answer, and it's not because you don't understand what the needs are. There's just such specificity to the need. You need space to organise all manner of things, and what you really need is to enable whoever can solve their own problems and get them on a more stable path. Getting that feed out, that's really what you need. You need more help.
That's right.
In the areas that are obvious, and sort of that fencing and that access point are probably a super practical thing. And that's gonna, these properties are massive, enormous, and they have cattle yards that might have been timber and sheds.
Yeah, that's right.
And
it's the practical parts of farming.
They can't be replaced
overnight.
Like for like, and they take a long time just to physically try and return the same level of capability. And
that's on a normal day, Max. You put an overlay of fire trauma. How are I call them old farts, but they're all ages. How do our old fart farmers even get their heads around the logistics of clearing it up, ordering, having to wait, having to choose, getting people in to do it, when historically they've done everything themselves and they're extremely proud. They've got to rely on other people now. They've got to potentially restore items to their farm that potentially are not insured. How do you do that? It's not like when you're 70 and 80, you can go back to the bank and go, can you give me another 50 grand? And that will get me my stockyards and some of my fencing done. You just can't do it. Banks won't touch you. And then you've got opportunities of grants, which you can apply, and this is a bit of a bugbear of mine at the moment. Some of the policy in and around the grant opportunities for primary producers are not ticking all the boxes. We've got nearly 1,000 odd properties, and we've only had about 300, I think it's my understanding, properties go through the application process. And 1/3 of them have been successful.
1/3. And this application process is not a simple, straightforward thing.
No. So you've got two tiers. You've got the 10 grand, you've got the 75K. And yes, there is support out there from different organisations that can work with old fart farmers to do that. But put yourself in a farmer's shoes. You've had 5 years of crap. You've had effectively COVID, floods, bushfires, drought. So on a good year, and you're supposed to have done that for a couple of years, have a turnover of more than 75 grand. How do you do that when you've had 5 years of tricky farming conditions? So we need a grant that is in between the 10 and the 75 for landowners also who may not be running a business or a primary producer on their land. We've got landowners up here that have between 50 to 100 to 200 to 300 acres or hectares. So they might adjust, they might lease. They may not be doing anything with the land. They might be resting it. They might be fencing. Now they're fencing. They might be doing all sorts of things. They've lost all their fencing. They've lost all the infrastructure, especially if they've bought a property that was historically much larger. So if you get a 5,000 acre property and you chop it up into bits and then sell it, they're all buying little bits of the infrastructure. And then when that infrastructure has been burnt, and their income doesn't really cover the farm because they've bought it as a lifestyle property or they've bought it as somewhere they're going to retire to, how do they recover? There's no options for them. And if they're not insured, like so many of us weren't, because why? Insurance had crept up. We weren't insured. I'm quite happy to tell people that because our story is very similar to everybody else's. Last year there was a drought. When we looked at the cost of insuring all our fences, we decided to use that money to feed our stock.
Yeah. So
and now, like everybody else, we've got $100,000 worth of fencing to be done. And it overwhelms you and binds you. People come to a screaming halt. And Blaze Aid and those companies and organisations out there have been amazing. Absolutely amazing. But you still got to buy your materials, or you've got to come in through Fawcett Hall, put your name down for materials, because your insurance that you don't have, or if you do have it, is totally underinsured, is not going to cover your fencing materials. So how can you even get back to a stage, if you are a full-time farmer, that you can get stock onto your paddocks? Or if you're not a farmer, how can you get it back to being fenced so that you could potentially adjust it out or lease it out? Or replace some of your shedding or your second house or whatever. You just walk around in circles because you cannot do it. And I think the policy is not entirely fit for purpose on a disaster of this scale. Because we really are applying, and I'm talking right off the top of my head here, Max, we really are applying what we've learnt in the past to this situation, and this is so different to what we've ever gone through before. 2009, we lost a hell of a lot of lives, hell of a lot of infrastructure, hell of a lot of houses. This time, it was really around fencing, shedding, 217 houses, bridges, pastures, trees. Don't know whether you noticed when you drove up Spring Creek Road, but we've lost 50% of our trees. And they're hardwoods.
Yep.
These are the big boys. These were the ones that were planted a long time ago, and they're gone. Our environment's changed.
Yep.
You would notice that driving from a Euroa, where you maybe come across to Ruffy or Terup in the past, there's a lot of vegetation gone.
Yeah, so many of those really large trees, you know, the size of a car, sort of stood on its end, have just got turned into chimney trees. In the situation they're in, they either fell over or right beside a set of cattle yards.
And they take out what's left.
And you think, gosh, and I guess this is another aspect to consider, is that when a fire, it goes through and it impacts
Everything.
but we also lose a big chunk of our, super valuable or unique, at the very least unique vegetation that I think most people value. You know, cows and stock doesn't mind hunkering under it for shade and whatnot.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's all gone. And then, I guess we were just talking there, you were talking about how the difference of this fire to others, and how I sort of, my view is there's a situation here where this is something that is imposed on the community. So it's something that comes from far away and then hits the community. The community has perhaps nothing to do with the origin and the circumstances that causes the circumstance to start unfolding, yet they're left with the consequences.
Yeah, that's right.
And when we see the support perhaps not where it should be, and the understandings at the very least not being sought, I see it as a massive concern, because we talk about, I'm looking at a cow through the window here, and what is that cow? It's got a dollar value, but that will feed somebody that goes on to be productive.
That's right.
And the impact of perhaps, 50,000 sheep, 30,000 cattle, or the numbers might be, you might have them.
I do.
Being lost affects markets, it affects
Oh, it's the roll-on
whole
effect.
long-term breeding programs and, climate, environment specific.
So we've got 5,608 sheep, 1,500 cattle, 4 dairy cattle, poultry, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just even 40 wool sheds.
Yeah.
So not only have we lost the ability to shear sheep in this region, we've lost history.
Yeah.
Some of those wool sheds were multi-generational. They won't get built back.
Yeah.
Because do you know how much it costs to build a wool shed these days?
$500,000. $1
Yeah,
million
that's
bucks
exactly right,
with
before you even
equipment.
start. 57 tractors.
Yeah.
Some of those tractors had been in families for 2 and 3 generations.
Yeah.
And insurance companies said, oh, we'll have to think about that because it's from another era. 31 farm trucks. 52 irrigation pumps. I think it's much more than that.
You touched on insurance before, and something that does pop into my head is when that preparedness perhaps isn't there from a policy perspective, and a physical sort of, physical situation, that probably is a big contributor to the risk assessments that our insurers do when they're formulating their premiums and so on, the less prepared a district might seem, the more expensive the insurance will be.
I think from my perspective, and it's only because I've got a little bit of knowledge because, as I said, I worked in state government, and one of the bigger concerns around impacts of flood and bushfire and natural disasters was the insurances went into a hardened market, meaning that premiums were going through the roof because there were so many claims. Mm-hmm. You know, you run a bushfire through, what do we get? 1,000 odd properties that have been impacted. Technically, that's 1,000 policies in one fire region. And we weren't the only fire in January. Mm-hmm. Skipton, all the other places were hit too. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, travel, like, it just went on and on and on. It was just such a crappy time of year. And I think for me, with those insurance premiums, people are finding it harder and harder to secure insurance. Mm-hmm. There are so many assets in the northeast of Victoria that are not insured, that cannot get insured, or insurance is out of reach for people. I've watched our insurances go up tenfold since we've been here. Okay, yes, that's 25, 26 years. That's to be expected. But when you are perceiving yourself to just be working for fuel, food and insurance, there's something wrong with the economies of scale with all of that, because if people cannot afford to take insurance out, they don't. And then when they do come around 1 or 2 years later down and they can again, they can't get it. There seems to be a real issue. I was very fortunate that I asked the ICC, or the Insurance Council of Australia, ICA, to come and talk to them when they came to Alexandra. And I gave them several pages of observations. And one of the things that I found that insurance companies didn't grapple well in our region is that all of our rural primary producers are actually small businesses in their own right. So many of them have ABNs, pay GST, and run as a family business. Mm-hmm. And the ICA's little insurance companies that all make up the ICA, a lot of the insurance companies really didn't have an understanding of that, because they see the house being destroyed, but they don't understand that part of that house is also a business. So when you drag it out with either a payout or you're grappling over what we're going to cover and what the fine print is on your product disclosure statement, they don't take into account that it's affected a family, but it's also affected the business and their ability to run. Because a lot of our agricultural operations, you know, it is their livelihood and it's where they live. And I think around the insurances, I think the biggest beef that I had, and this is purely based on observations and conversations, was around what I call a legacy insurance premium. So this is around a family who may have had the same insurance policy for 60 years.
Okay.
So what happens, and I like to use my little piece of paper, is the original footprint would have been this big.
Right.
And as they've gone on, they've extended and they've done all these things. And if the insurance company and the insured person haven't had that conversation about extensions and stuff, or the insurance company haven't sent somebody out, when the fire comes through, the insurance company really only wants to insure this footprint. Then when you add or take away BAL, this is the footprint size they end up with. So they go from an A4 sheet of paper down to really a slither.
Not even a postcard, business card. Yeah.
So that family effectively over 60 years has paid their house off 4 or 5 times through their insurance premiums because they keep going up every year. But when it comes down to it, that was a real issue. So if there's no review of rebuild costs, replacement values, BAL compliance, rural construction pricing, fencing and infrastructure replacement, debris removal costs or inflation impacts, what people end up with at the end of the day is minuscule on what they actually thought they were insured for.
And I guess I might just use a personal reference. So I've got a little bit of machinery and a small block that's insured, some house insurance, and each year will probably sit around $25,000.
Yep.
So, and I'd say for a lot of people that, you know, some would be a lot more, some would be really close to that. So once you've got a couple of tractors and
That's right.
fencing and so on. So we're talking about $250,000 a decade.
Yep.
You know, that adds up, and it's quite shocking, really, when we think about the amount of money being brought in and the return of service
That's
that
right.
we're getting. And some people might never make a claim.
That's right.
Or a
May
lot.
never. May
A lot-
never.
a lot
That's
of
right.
people. And because they're like, I'll look after my policy, I don't want to affect my discount, for example, so they won't make a claim. And yeah, they may effectively pay an extra tax in the hope that they'll get that service if they ever need it. It's a real shame to see that, because we've got good people, whether they're primary producers in a business sense, most will be producing some stock, or that land will be producing hay or something
Yep.
that contributes to what we all depend on, which is food. Quite essential, difficult to exist without it. It's quite shocking.
It is, and I think it brings back the thing that most people really need an insurance broker. Somebody will actually ask the questions like, how many hay bales do you have in the shed this year, Max?
Yeah,
Have you put any new gates in recently?
yeah,
Just so it's noted on the
Yeah.
policy. And yes, sometimes it costs you a bit more, but then when the fire hits or disaster hits, then at least those things will be either replaced or paid out or like for like, whatever, but you have some security, because the reality of it, that a lot of our older residents just assumed that, you know, with their long-term loyalty, that their coverage would remain current, I suppose, and suitable to what they needed when disaster hits, and it wasn't.
yeah. I guess that creates a little bit of a thought. Given your experience and your prior experience from 2009, have you seen much advocacy on the part of insurers to government to help wherever possible reduce risk?
Oh, that's really interesting and a quite a loaded question. I think in 2009, and I actually went back and spoke to a lot of people in and around Marysville and Kinglake a couple of years ago when I was working on insurance case studies. And I asked everybody, did your insurance go up after the 2009 bushfires? Yes, it did. Okay, that's interesting. Were you asked by your insurance company to do anything different? Were you asked to make sure you have backup generators or you have water on hand or any of those things to lower your risk? No, not really. I actually asked the ICA, I suggested to the ICA that insurance companies really have a duty of care to say to their policyholders, especially those who are older, has anything changed in the last 12 months that we need to be aware of? Have you done anything to make yourself risk averse? Are you putting, hypothetically, just like with security, are you putting cameras up? Are you putting exceptional locks on your doors? But what are they doing around their rural clients. So they actually asking them, are you making yourself less risk averse? A lot of people that have spoken to me post the fires in relation to their gardens, just as an example, are telling me that they are now going to put their gardens around their houses in a totally different light. No trees near the house. They're going for lower shrubbery, a lot more rock, stuff that technically doesn't burn. And I thought, that's really interesting. I've got other people that have lost timber houses, and when they've asked their insurance company, when I rebuild, I don't want a timber house. Oh, well, sorry, your policy is like for like. Well, why would I do that now that I've suffered bushfire? Why would I build back a timber house? Because the next time the bushfire comes through, going to have the same result. Why can't I build a more bushfire resilient home?
That seems extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. And in some of those cases, those locals have told me they are willing to foot the bill in between the like for like and having a more bushfire attack ready house, a more resilient house, and they've been told no.
Which is even more extraordinary, because you would assume that if those companies are able to retain a customer, is that customer, all things being considered, horrible experience, but at least the insurer was able to help find a path, that builds a relationship.
That's exactly right, and it builds loyalty.
Retain the customer, and if their asset is less risky, that's still being insured.
Wouldn't that just help the whole system?
Their exposure less, so it's extraordinary stuff. It's interesting to try and understand where the incentives might lie there, because we talk about 1,000 odd properties, and what you had listed there, it's an enormous effect.
I'm just trying to see. Oh, this was another good one. And being a local business, you would understand this. Many residents were raising the concern about using local contractors with clean-up or rebuild. So there was a lot of concerns that residents were saying that people were coming from out of region to quote, and they would literally go, oh, it's an insurance job, and rub their hands with glee, and put up a quote that's 4 times the norm.
Yeah.
They wouldn't use local contractors, they'd be using out of regional contractors. There was layers and layers of project management built in. And there was no real engagement with local trades and suppliers. So what worries me, and taking my Fawcett Hall hat off and putting my small business advisor's hat on for a minute, can you cope with that?
Yeah.
That makes our regions take 2.5 times longer to recover when you're not investing back locally with local contractors.
Yeah.
Why would you not support local businesses? And when I brought that up with the ICA, they said, oh, they have policies and, layers around and context around, using people that have got the right tickets and all of those things. And I said, well, when we do things, normally most people get 3 quotes. Why would you not consider it part of policy around the insurance companies having their own internal policies, which I suppose they can't be governed by per se, but why would you not say, let's get 2 external quotes and 1 internal quote, as far as a local contractor being 1/3 of the quoting process? And again, I just sort of got, oh, well, that would be a good idea. But I thought there's going to be no real change with that.
I guess something, like an individual like yourself and as you're witness to many others that have an enormous amount of capacity, and I think local contractors have enormous capacity too.
They have the local knowledge.
And they're not planning on going anywhere. So
no, that's right.
Yeah, they have a big incentive to look after people and, make sure I clean this piece up and that piece up and be attentive and get the job done properly. And I guess it's really a bit of plugging the gaps, that's required. So how do we, if there is some hazardous materials or things that might be a bit sensitive, maybe a specialist is needed
That's
to
right.
tackle that little piece.
That's right.
And alongside the local contractor, just from a community safety perspective. And the whole time we're keeping in mind that this is something imposed on the community.
That's right.
It's not something anybody's tried to bring upon themselves. And that seems like, again, a hand of assistance that's really sensible. It's not, there's nothing questionable at all about it, because it's a clear win-win scenario where it's a place where we've got standards that we're trying to uphold. Do we bring in people who mightn't have an existing relationship with the community, whilst our contractors are sitting to the side, maybe working in town, scratching for work, sort of thing, and they're not really allowed to be part of the process. And it's a difficult thing to watch.
It is, because on job sites it's called a chop out, where you get somebody else in to help you finish off the job. So why can't the insurance companies say to the people that are quoting, hey, listen, you're going into a regional area.
Yeah.
Can you make sure that you touch base with a couple of local contractors and see if there's an ability to engage them in this process, or this cleanup, or this rebuild? Yeah, because they're the ones that know when the transfer stations are open. They know which quarries are the best ones to get gravel and dirt out that's going to be compatible with the environment here, or where they can get local plants or whatever. They've got the local knowledge. And you're right, some of the higher ticketed areas where you have to get a specialist in, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But why can't we think outside the square, people? This is going to help this community recover if we can get, say, 2 local contractors to be part of this project.
Yeah. That's I guess it's that teamwork.
It is.
Of these businesses, we need to function. Obviously, they've got to be competitive. They've got to be able to do the job. That's important. But they become a support mechanism for the community as well. And
Exactly
if we all,
right.
share in that experience of rebuild, it's an opportunity to be present in the community rather than being detached for some of those local contractors, I'd assume, which is critical.
It is critical.
So what else is sort of there? There's this, I just sort of had a thought, and it'll come back to me, and it was around your prior experience. Do you see any role for sort of case management? So a point of authority or advocacy for affected landholders. Is that something that has been present, or do you think it's something
Yeah, I think in a way all the local hubs that are mobilised were their voices for their community.
Yeah.
So, for example, here at Fawcett Hall, people would come and talk to me. I think people understood very quickly that I have integrity above self. I'm not chatting about people's personal details to everybody that walks through the door.
Yeah.
But collectively, from an observation point of view, I can tell local government, state government, listen, I've got 40 landowners that were concerned about this. So it's mass. It's not 1 or 2 having a gripe. This is a real issue, a real barrier for recovery, because this is happening. And I think that potentially, in a way, you could say that I've stepped out of my lane as president of our hall, because it's not in our remit to do this advocacy. But who else is going to do it? I could say, yes, there's half a dozen people in the community that have got the skills to do it, but I suppose the protective mama bear in me is saying they've lost homes. They're not in their community at the moment. They're outside of the community trying to navigate insurance, payouts, employment, fencing, all of those issues. Do we really want to overload those people with another layer of, you have to help advocate? I mean, I know there are some days, Max, where my brain is mush. Then there's other days where I have huge clarity, and then I sit there and smash out letters and reports and pull all the information in that I've gathered into something that I can then send off and say, please read this. It has case studies. It doesn't mention people or who they are, but it talks about the collective issues. Why, how can we navigate through this? How can we make sure we don't do this again? Or how can I get assistance for this group of people that are suffering through this at the moment? And I think for me, that has given me a sense of purpose through the hall and made our hall entirely relevant, because we do advocate. You know, I do have a committee of community-minded people who have come up with all sorts of bits and pieces and observations and challenges and so forth. But then so has the wider community, and it just goes into a big melting pot. And then I can advocate by writing, sending emails, keeping in constant contact. I've had so many meetings here with ministers and EMV and all of those groups and organisations, and, you know, people are trying to help. When I look at all the organisations that we've worked with, from service clubs like Rotary and Lions, Operation Vet Assist, like if those guys hadn't come out and done a 6-week deployment here at the hall, lived on the reserve and helped a lot of our return vets and first emergency services people in our community, who else would have done it? That was a huge gap. Then we had 4-wheel drive Victoria. These guys, you know, represent several hundred clubs right across Victoria, and those guys come up every weekend, 9 times out of 10 working in their own businesses or working full time. Then they come up on the weekend, they're ticketed, they've got their own machinery, their own chainsaws, their own vehicles. They can get in, because you know what the terrain's like, chop trees down off fence lines so that then Blaze Aid can come in and help. And because there was no one organisation, government can't do all of that. So those partnerships came in through the hall. And it needed to be done, because, you know, I looked at all these little gaps and I thought, who can help me do all these things? And sometimes they just presented themselves. You know, neighbours would say to the 4-wheel drive club, I think you need to go and talk to Sam at the hall, because you're helping us, but I think you could help another 35 landowners with this. You know, and those partnerships came into being because local government, state government couldn't have mobilised quick enough and do all of that. You know, we've still got gaps. You know, I would love to be able to have, you know, a big wood splitter here that the community can borrow, or have a voucher that I can give to a landowner for, say, $500 to say, please go and engage this person to come in with their excavator and pick out the 400-year-old hardwoods that are in your creek up onto the bank, so you can chop them up and use them for firewood down the track. You know, these are still some of the challenges. We've recently teamed up with Give It, because there are still things coming in that people require. And we can't do it by ourselves. Government can't do it. It doesn't matter how much funding they allocate or put out there, they're not going to be wanting to pay for assets or bits and pieces. So we have to team up.
I think that's an interesting point. Because I think we can often fall to a situation where we create these perfect sort of plans. You know, right, these massive, complex systems and sets of documents. And I did hear it from many different places that we've planned for all this. We've got all this written down. Why didn't it happen? Whether it be in the firefight, whether it be perhaps with the local council, whether it be in different departments, you know, why isn't it our system? Why isn't our plan clicking with reality? And I guess you touched on something which was pretty obvious, you know, when you've experienced it as you have. If you know 20 or 40 people with the same problem, and you've condensed it in a local sort of geographic area, and you can say there's great similarity with the issues and we can express it. That's a lot more useful than having 200 case managers, which are all got their own thoughts, compressing these situations into their own reports that are then difficult to digest, keeping the requests as simple as possible so that when it actually gets to those that are in need, it's actually relevant.
And timely.
Yeah.
And timely.
Yeah.
You know, in a past life as a small business advisor, we reported directly to the small business minister, and our reports went in weekly. Because you know why? Things change. On day 3 or 4, I was very fortunate that I was asked by Foundation Murrindindi, what do you want? And I said, I want a day-by-day diary. Now, Robin and Sasha from Foundation Murrindindi knew exactly what I was asking for, because situations change from one day to the next, and for me to be able to document it so I could look back and go, well, that was January's issue, but now here we are in July and our issues are this, this and this. I could actually go back and look at my notes. I could actually round those notes up, and each week I put an update on our socials, because I want people to see what our challenges are or what our successes are or what's actually happening, because we've got people from around the world that are watching our little hall and our recovery, and I think they've got a vested interest, like we all have here locally on the ground, to see that we actually get in there and put one foot in front of the other and things are changing. And I think you're right, you've always got to have one voice to government. During the 2009 bushfires in Marysville, we had a tourism association and we had a chamber of commerce. And government really didn't want to listen to two, they wanted to listen to one voice, streamline it. And those two organisations had to merge. They had to amalgamate to become one voice. So here, we work very closely with the Corella Fire Brigade. The captain and I are in constant conversation, because what is affecting the brigade members is slightly different to what's affecting the hall, and yet we're all in the same community.
Yeah.
Corella Fire Brigade have a 34-year-old truck. They really would like a new one. They'd like an ultralight, because the anxiety for us non-CFA personnel is when that truck is out, there's nothing here to protect the immediate community. And you talked about resilience before. We did the CFA fire ready planning training years and years ago. It's how we got the tables and chairs that we're sitting on, the cutlery, the wood fire pizza and those things, because that was part of that grant. And when I look back at my fire plan back then to what my fire plan was today, so different. Our fire plan back then was just to open all our paddocks and let our stock do what they needed to do. But back then we didn't have 100% solar, we didn't have a bore, you didn't even think about things like generators. Now, when I talk to people, they're all talking about, I've got a generator point getting installed. We've just had it done at the hall here. Now, when we did that fire-ready planning all those years ago, we didn't talk about generators. We didn't talk about resilience. We didn't talk about having a backup plan of a backup plan of a backup plan. You know, one thing that did happen this time that we talked about all those years ago was having a collective fire tree. But back then it was about, you would ring 5 people on the landline, and out of those 5 people, then we would ring another 5 people. So one phone call would branch out like a tree. This time we did it all on Messenger. Our CFA captain's wife, Tiff, set up a messenger fire tree and connected as many community people as we could to disseminate information very quickly. So you can do plans, but it's like having a kid. The birthing plans sometimes go out the window when you have the impact. Because who would have thought we would have had a fire, a grass fire, that, and I'm not a CFA person, so you can correct me, but I was told by people who were on the ground on the day, saying this was an unusual fire because of the wind. It was doing what they call a 360, meaning it would go in one direction, the wind would change it, and it would change to another completely different direction.
Yeah.
And it did that.
Yeah.
Because that's why when I looked at my paddocks when I first came back, I walked around in my paddocks and I'm like, why is that paddock not burnt in that section? Why are there huge bits where it's not burnt? Why is that burnt in a strip?
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it. And when my partner sat there and said, well, that was about 4 wind changes in one paddock within a few minutes, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't even comprehend that. And I am not fire educated.
Well, it was an experience for myself because the experience I had was in the Ruffy area and then the Gurum area, and it was many fires. So how I sort of was interpreting it at the time was it's burning around you, but at different times through different vegetation in different ways. So the resulting thing is you see a blackened landscape. But how that all came to be in that state is a varying, points of reignition, wind changes, like you say, and that was obvious to me at the time, and I was like, oh, it's interesting to observe, but not something, unless you've seen it on a video or something over an extended period of time. And I'm not sure if there is any documentation of that out there, because I think it'd be pretty valuable to the community to see how there can be space in the landscape at times where the situation allows. But that really changes your perspective from a firefighting perspective, and like how you're, the variance. So you could have that fire do its thing 100 times and you probably have quite different outcomes
Every time.
each time.
That's right. So how do you plan for that?
That's the difficult thing. We're just watching a truck, large.
Now
water.
you watch, they slow down
Yeah.
to see if they can navigate,
Do their risk
do
assessment.
their risk assessment to see whether or not they're wide enough to fit.
Yeah. And that'd be water.
That's water, probably going to do a tank refill
Yeah.
at a house.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about the impact of not having a bridge,
How do you get water through?
yeah, just and the reliance.
And that truck can't come in from the other end.
Yeah.
The cowboys do try.
So a lot of people might say, "Oh, it's rained."
Yeah, but if you don't have
would've-
tanks,
you would have got water in your tank, but maybe people don't have a roof that can catch water.
That's exactly
They might
right.
be in a caravan.
That's right.
So it's just not possible to harvest the water, and just not practical. So they're dependent on water continuously coming in until those structures, until permits are approved, until the actual,
That's exactly right.
or it can be financed.
Did
to
you hear about the IBC program that Yark Hall did through ADRA?
No.
So Sandy realised very early on in the place that everybody's tanks were gone. People didn't have access to water for themselves or for their stock. So she worked with ADRA and they organised hundreds and hundreds of brand new IBCs. Now, the cynic in me says, thank God for ADRA, but why does the Seventh-day Adventists have to do something on that scale that should have been automatic?
Yeah.
They had to go out and fundraise for that, Max.
Yeah. Whilst.
And then volunteers
Yeah.
had to do all the logistics. They had to fundraise to get them up here, fundraise to get them delivered, and then backfill using local contractors to fill them with water.
What an amazing
It's
effort.
a basic need. And if Sandy and ADRA hadn't have done that, how would these properties even got drinking water when they've lost their tanks? They might have lost their houses, if you said, and got no gutters to capture rain, and especially when we were coming off the back end of a drought. We did not get the rain. I know how many tank loads of water we had last year, and it was 50 times more than the previous year. Because why? We didn't get the rainfall last year. And that was the other thing you were talking about, the preparedness. we had no rain. So we had long grass, yes, in some aspects, in some properties. When you get normal rainfall in a normal season, your grass grows, your cows eat it. Then as it comes into summer, it sort of dies off, but it's only about this high. When you get a drought year, if your cows don't get around to everything, they're not going to eat the grass that's this high and yellow because it's got no nutritional value in it or it doesn't taste right.
Yeah.
How can you prepare for that?
Yeah.
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 But yeah, no, Adra and Sandy did an amazing job getting those IBCs out.
And there seems to be lots of cases, a little bit like what you just described there with the IBCs and the water supply, where that was something that, sure, the community could do, but really was a big opportunity for government to do something basic. That is
Why
fair.
do we not have a storage facility somewhere that has, hypothetically, 200 IBCs stored ready to go?
And I'm sure there's suppliers out there which at a very competitive rate could service a lot of these needs rapidly. And again, your roads and things like that just make the situation so much more manageable. I think it's fair.
It worries me about the road comment, Max, because you know we're suffering with potholes. If we can't even manage the potholes, how are we going to... I could take you today, after this interview, drive you up the road and show you where a tree impacted the road. Right? Now, it's not a huge hole, but I photographed it, I think, week 3, because I had a resident come to me and say, Sam, you know what's going to happen to this? It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And we're watching it get worse. It hasn't got deeper, but it's got wider. Because when one of those hardwoods comes down, 100 miles an hour and hits that road, it's going to damage it. And we can't even get the potholes fixed. How can we get fire damaged roads fixed, Max?
I guess it's a scenario where, it's not unreasonable to have those expectations that what can be done to assist the community in its recovery effort, not necessarily on private land, but just on the public land, on the public infrastructure, should really be accelerated and probably seen as an opportunity to contribute to the rebuild effort. It has been a bit bizarre to me to observe how there's been so many opportunities where basic contributions could be made. I'm not sure whether it's an issue of communication, an issue of sort of freedom of action, why this is the case, but it certainly has a massive impact on people.
Well, it does. And I mean, one part of me says, well, why should you get your fire-affected roads fixed, Sam, when I drive down a highway and I wreck 4 rims because I've hit 2 potholes that have been there for way longer than your fires? It's hard to...
Well, neither should exist.
No, that's exactly right. But why should one be more important than the other? Do you know what I mean?
24 hours. I think that's the answer to that situation. If we set the expectation that we make it safe within 24 hours and then come up with a plan of action, then resourcing needs to match it. And
well, yeah, we just put signs around it or draw unmentionables around it and hope that it gets repaired. But
yeah, and
it's hard to balance between fixing a fire-affected road to a road that takes much more traffic and has the potential of damaging a lot more cars.
And the danger.
That's exactly right.
That comes with it. People still got to live.
That's right, and move and traverse around. And you only have to look on social media to see how many tyres, rims, cars are getting wrecked. And your only recourse is, unless the damage is $1,080, $1,800, does any compensation come back towards you? That's hard.
Well,
Cost of living.
I guess that's
Compliance. If you drive a crummy car on the road, Max, you'll get pulled over and fined. But the roads are crummy. I can understand people saying things like that on social media.
I think it's a fair criticism, and I guess that does get back to our preparedness point of the standards we walk past are the standards we set, and and I don't think it's unfair or unreasonable. We're spending a lot of money. Many of us are working quite hard, contributing in a tax, with our taxation, and then also with the productive things we do in the community through our businesses. But then also, many of us are taking time out of our productive time, earning an income to then go on and advocate for basic need.
You talk about the hours. We did a bit of a count up for Volunteer Week in May. Now, Blaze Aid to date, back then, had done 20,000 hours of volunteer work. Now, I worked out when we added up four-wheel drive Victoria's hours, Operation Vet Assists, our community hours, Blaze Aids or whatever, we were fast approaching, if not exceeded, $2 million worth of volunteer hours. So where's the $2 million technically that one can ask or argue that has come back in to the community to almost matchy that?
And this is essential stuff. I mean, no one goes out and volunteers.
We're not asking for chandeliers in our chook sheds. That'd be nice. We don't have chook sheds, but how nice would it be to have 55 bridges put back in so that we've got access for community and tourism can return to our region, because our farming sector's taken such a blow. And when you look at our small little region of Murrindindi, it's tourism and farming that drives it, and retail. Well, you and I don't even need to have that discussion on how retail is on its knees with compliance and insurance and wages and all that stuff that goes into it. But you take farming out because of fire, you take tourism out because the rail trail is a big attractor because people can bike it, ride it, walk it. Can't do that now. It all affects an economy, a local economy's ability to recover. And you can't be resilient with that.
Well, it draws a lot more energy from you to achieve the same outcome.
That's exactly right.
So looking forward 6 months, what are the things
we want? A new bridge.
You want to see a new bridge?
Yeah, I want to see a new bridge. People often asked me from day one, what did you want? And I said 500,000 star pickets. Star pickets for our communities, for our rural communities, are the difference between getting stock back on land, sense of security. We've had undesirables come into our community and break into CFA sheds, break into homes and shedding. Because why? There's no fencing, there's no gates up. Why those AHs do that, I don't know, but 500,000 star pickets and a new bridge and an ultralight for the Corella Fire Brigade would be absolutely awesome. And I think too, moving forward, I want policy that is fit for purpose and is agile and has parameters that enable everybody to get something or some form of assistance. Not talking about an equal playing field, talking about doesn't matter where they fit into the scheme of things, that they can actually get some assistance. In the early days, Max, I was really surprised because after the 2009 bushfires, when I ended up at the Leisure Centre in Alexandra, because I was physically ticking off a list to make sure that my Marysville people were safe, and I knew probably by about that Saturday afternoon that we'd lost a lot of people. Personally lost 18 people that I worked with. But Services Australia, and I can't even remember what they were called back then, you know, they were on site at the Leisure Centre talking to people, getting payments, getting people, because people back then didn't have the connectivity that we had. Like, I don't know about you, but with my mobile, I can do virtually everything outside of the fire region, as long as I've got connectivity, as long as I can connect to MPN or Starlink or Telstra or whatever, a carrier, I can do things. Back in 2009, we weren't that set up. So people were turning up at the leisure centre. They didn't have BSBs or account numbers. They couldn't even remember what the freaking bank accounts were called because they were fire trauma. They'd lost their villages, their house, their business. And Services Australia, or whatever they were called back then, were trying to sit down and work with people. And I was pretty impressed with that because they were setting up little tables and they were talking to people. This time around, we had Services Australia, we had Telstra. I'm trying to think of the other agencies that came out with them. Red Cross, all of those ones came out and they were out the front of the hall. And this shows you the difference between 2009 to now. I watched people struggling to get bits and pieces of their life back at the leisure centre, sitting with people one-on-one, and the lines were huge. 7 minutes it took me. 7 minutes it took me to talk to Telstra and say to them, my bill's due this today, don't disconnect my phone, because I need my phone, even though we're in a Telstra black spot. That only took a few minutes. Then I sat down with Services Australia and I got the immediate payment. 7 minutes and I was done. I was pretty impressed with that. Pretty impressed. But then Services Victoria, there's such a, I don't know, there seems to be such a disconnect because not everybody is digital literacy, can't even say it, literally can't even say it, I'll think of it in a minute, sorry I need a coffee.
Digitally
they have that
literate.
Digital literacy,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not everybody is set up on their phones to be able to access stuff. You know, they may not be able to get an email on their phone, they may not be able to get a code, you know, to do those navigational things. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to have one centralised platform? You've been through a disaster, Max. Yeah. We need your first name, your middle name, your last name, your address, your telephone number, and we need you to tick these 10 boxes and then we'll do everything else by magic. Yeah. You'll get your state payments, your federal payments, whatever you need to get because you have been displaced because of a disaster. Yeah. A one-stop shop.
I guess there's an element of accountability there. We're keeping records so we can identify.
That's right.
Have identities been used multiple times?
Yeah, that's right.
That. And I guess it probably takes a fair bit of pressure off those individuals running those systems because they're probably quite frustrated.
That's right.
With what they're trying to.
There's no central database.
And how do we? I guess there's some people might have concerns about privacy and things like that. But I guess if there is one point of
point of entry, one point of contact.
Well, that's where it must have gone wrong. So there's a way of tracing.
That's
where
right.
We've lost control of the privacy, because if information's out and about in 100 different hands, there's probably an element of risk there too.
That's right. And I mean, I know people have got to have a certain amount of trust. If it's one central place. What happens if the platform falls down? You only have to look at the Rego fiasco. Yeah. You know, systems were crashing because, you know, who would have thought 1 million people would try in the first 24 hours to get their Rego rebates back? I still haven't, by the way, because every time I logged on, I couldn't get through, so I gave up.
It's an extraordinary thing to ask, and it's probably a different scenario with the Rego things, but it does highlight circumstances where you've been affected, something's been imposed on you, like in this fire setting, and then it looks like a mountain. And I can relate to that. It's like,
so why can't you lodge your name once, lodge your details once, and then if that shows up and it's all interconnected with Centrelink and whatever agency, it all kicks into play. Rather than having to go through all these touch points. Because when you're fire traumatized, that first couple of weeks, I equated it to being constantly drunk all the time without the happy buzz. You're foggy. Unless you write things down, you can't remember who you've spoken to because everybody's coming at you. Every agency known to man is coming at you. And I kept saying to the agencies, please, piano, just slow down, take your time. If people are looking a bit, write it down for them or give them simple correspondence. Simple, easy to read.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like having a checklist. Are you fire affected? Yes. Did you lose your home? No, go to point 2. That type of thing, but just on a one pager, nice and simple, because people don't have the ability to traverse levels of complexity. And as a society, we've got all these little silos that you've got to go from one silo to the next to tick a box to get a payment or to get this or to get that. And even things, this is my favourite story to tell, Max.
Yeah.
We've been with a range of power suppliers over the years, but we went to get the rebate because we didn't have power back up to our solar for more than 14 days.
Yeah.
Anyway, my other half just said to me, can you do the paperwork? I have got other things to worry about. And he was quite foggy like I was. I reached out through the online lodgement through the power company. I am on the power account. But because my name is the second name, I couldn't lodge the payment for the rebate. And when I rang, I said to them, quote unquote, are we living in the 1930s? What happens if my partner had died in the fire? Oh, you'd have to provide a death certificate. And I said, yeah, you're not getting the actual point that I'm asking. Both names appear. I'm doing the paperwork. He stayed and fought the fire. Today is not a good day for him to ring and spend 3 hours on the phone with you trying to get a $1,500 rebate. But they wouldn't deal with me because I was the second name on the account. And we had done that just in case something could happen to either one of us so that we could ring and talk about the account.
Extraordinary stuff.
Extraordinary stuff. Yeah. And that wasn't the only instance.
No. And this has been...
I've had residents that have had to ring up and impersonate their partners, females, ladies, deep in their voices to say, oh, this is Max here, to get access for stuff. I mean, how hard are we making it for people?
It's pretty extraordinary.
And read the room. I'm really sorry. I had people ring me and say, oh, and I'm like, we're in postcode 3714. Yeah, so read the room. No power, no comms. We're fire affected.
We still don't really have comms.
Well, no, we're in Telstra Black Spot here. And we're in a valley. That's never going to change. We've got hills. We've got Starlink, thankfully for Starlink. But yeah, people wouldn't read the room.
Yeah.
It was quite bizarre. I mean, we couldn't even get Fawcett and Corriella onto the national listing for a bushfire affected area. That happened probably a week in. I had somebody that had lost their house here locally try to ring to get a payment, to be told you're not in a fire affected area. And that person had to say, well, I'm sorry, I've just watched my house burn to the ground. I'm not too sure what you think is happening here on the fire ground. And it wasn't until we approached local government to go in through the MERC and through the ICC to get it added. But why should we have to do that? No. Why couldn't they have looked at the app, the Victoria Emergencies app? It was fairly clear. Okay, even that wasn't accurate because it was a couple of Ks out, but pick up the townships, pick up the postcodes, apply it across. Why do we got to tell 50 different departments that we were fire affected? Why didn't an alert go out across all departments, all levels of government, to say this area here, fire affected? All these postcodes, all these townships, fire affected. All these names, fire affected. All these landowners and folio names, fire affected. Just recently, they only acknowledged Woodfield as being fire affected. What about Trail Wall? Oh, was that fire affected? Yeah.
It's quite concerning
It
because
is very concerning.
if
We're in a digital age, for the love of
yeah,
God.
and we've got satellites. And
Yeah,
we've
that's
got
right. Hello.
all these mechanisms that can be used, and that certainly did affect the firefight.
Yeah, that's right.
Lack of situational awareness, and it's really concerning to see when time is on your side. You know, you've got days, you've got even weeks to identify what areas, if you're a service provider, that bit of awareness.
That's right.
Just do a call to
Or message.
to check in. Exactly,
Hey.
something that doesn't pressure.
Hey, we've noticed you're in a fire affected area.
If you need us.
If you need us, here's a 1300 number, and we have fire trained trauma people on the other end of the phone. Not that you need to mention that, but there were so many instances where service providers would put in people that had never dealt with fire affected people ever on their call centres.
Yeah, and that's tough. It's
That
always,
is tough.
It's experience is something you continue to gain. So you can have a fair bit of experience and still find situations challenging. But I did notice several instances where there was even no necessarily relationship to any regional settings. So it was all foreign.
Yeah, that's right.
Which that just seems like an awful position to put somebody in as a service provider.
That's
because
right.
they're walking into an environment where they can't determine up from down.
That's right.
And it's quite risky too.
It is very risky.
Yeah.
And it's quite traumatic for both people,
No.
whether the call centre person or the person on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
You know, there should be a flagging, a CRM flag that fires up. Oh, Sam's ringing in. This is her mobile number. She's been a client for some time.
Yeah.
Oh, look at her postcode. She's been fire affected.
Yeah.
Let's say to her things like, we've got a process. If you need to follow it, here's a link. We're texting it to your phone. Fill it out. It's 3 questions. Job's done.
Yeah.
I think customer service and the ability to react, to enable policy from corporations to be fire aware, disaster aware. It's not our first rodeo. How many fires and bloody floods do we have to have before corporate Australia, governments, have policies that kick into gear when disaster happens?
And it's just, we're mainly, and you correct me if you think I'm wrong, but like we're talking about the things where it's appropriate to assist.
That's
So
right.
if you've lost telecommunications, if you've lost your electricity supply, if water is something that, you know, is an issue to get people back on their land.
What about insurance premiums that still continue to come out of your account when you've lost your house or your tractor or your car? Hello?
Just a temporary sort of bit of,
Why wouldn't that flag at the system?
and that.
I'm sorry, you're in a fire affected area, your postcode is. Then we get a manual flag, email. Hey Max, you're part of the insurance team. Can you just check in on this client? We're still taking money out of their account. Is this car still drivable? Or is it perished? It's not that hard.
No, I think it's, and I guess a lot of these things have been strategized and planned, but it is just getting back to that point we made earlier of
It's not implemented though.
there's this quote or phrase from war that is no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's right.
And you can have the greatest, grandest sort of things, but you really are dependent on resilient systems, so that they're actually there when you need them. It's sort of spread out. Is there anything that you can see in the future that are upcoming challenges that you'd like to mention?
I think if we were to go through this again, I'd actually like to see governments understand the importance of supporting their local halls and hubs. If I think about what we've done as a hall, and I've got some stats here for you that I'll have to talk to because I'm starting to get foggy and old. We've put $220,000 worth of relief and recovery back into the local community. We supplied 200 and something bales of hay. We've given, $2 million worth of volunteer work out there, and we supported to date over 140 landowners. If I hadn't fundraised in that first week through social media, our hall would have gone broke trying to pay the bills.
So the services you were providing in that first week were like meals.
Yeah, that's right.
Just basic provisions.
But water, comms and food.
Yeah.
Then we liquidated. We raised $30,000 in that first week, which we liquidated into fuel. God, my brain's gone, sorry. Fuel vouchers, food vouchers, vouchers for things like, I think, week 3 or 4. I had 1 or 2 landowners come in and say that they'd done a set of tyres. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then the next person walked in and said, I've just done 2 tractor tyres. I'm like, why is everybody's tyres going? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, they've either been melted or all the debris, all the nails and stuff that have come out of their burnt sheds and houses are now littered throughout their paddocks. So every time they drive through a paddock or drive down a road, they're doing tyres. I did a couple of sets of tyres in that time.
Yeah.
So then I thought, right, well, we'll get tyre power style vouchers so people can come in. So when people walked in the next week and said they'd done a set of tyres, I could give them a voucher to go and get 1 or 2 tyres repaired. Yeah. Trailer tyres.
Yeah.
How many trailer tyres did we kill in this region? Millions.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the trailers were burnt. The trailers themselves weren't too bad, some electrical work and a new set of tyres and off they'd go. But, it was the changing part of that. So I think next time around it would be making sure that government and local government understand that the halls, if they're fully equipped, got a generator, have got access to comms and can get deliveries in and can open their doors to feed people and provide a safe place for every community member to come and their dogs and their animals, that support is given, either resources being volunteer help or paid help or funds.
This is just something that's popped into my head, and tell me if you think it's completely unreasonable. But do you think if you have an emergency like this, do you think it will be unreasonable to match like financial donations? Do you think
the God, a 1-to-1 would be fabulous.
Because
if we had raised $30,000 and then the government said, well, good on you, we'll give you another 30, my God, we could have helped 280 landowners.
I wonder because these things can be difficult to understand where need is, but if people won't really donate money if they don't trust the system they're donating to.
There was not a lot of trust after the 2009 bushfire funding.
And that's probably where your reference to the importance of the hubs really comes down to it. We're dealing with perhaps not millions and millions of dollars, we're dealing with tens of thousands of dollars, which are very impactful for individuals.
That's exactly right, because the return on the investment is tenfold when it's community driven.
And it's not getting gobbled up by administration and so on. And
that's exactly right, and Sam's not running off to Bali.
And it's reducing need for additional government systems.
That's exactly right, because there were so many gaps that we had to plug.
Yeah. Flow on impact.
And a lot of people said, Sam, we would much rather donate to the hall because it's going directly to the community.
And that's
direct.
Yeah.
No admin fees, no nothing. And you can be agile in your decision making, going from fuel vouchers to tyre power vouchers to food vouchers. Because people couldn't access money. And a lot of older people in a community would go to the supermarket and get cash out. But see, the service stations and the supermarkets were hit people getting cash out, then their cash reserves would have gone. Do you know what I mean? Like, you couldn't get to the banks. You couldn't get out of the region. So fuel vouchers were huge. And even getting food supply in, I've got photos up on Facebook where, you know, we look like a little IGA because people could come in and get dog food, or they could come and get working dog food. Once I worked out that working dogs eat totally different than normal domestic dogs. That was one lesson I learnt very early on. You know, they get a bale of hay for the horses or the cow, they get some food, non-perishable items, and take home, because we didn't have power. And then I worked out very quickly too, by about week 2, it was costing most of us $70 a day just in fuel for the generators to keep one fridge going. So then it was fuel vouchers.
Yeah.
You know, we were handing out fuel vouchers. Then the fuel vouchers were fabulous, but then people didn't have a fuel container to put the fuel in. So then we set up a fuel container swap. So we had 30 diesel, 30 leaded petrol containers. And then I had my Fawcett Angels come out, grab those containers, take them into town, fill them up, bring them back. Because people didn't have cars or tractors, but they had generators. And a lot of the times they didn't want to drive into town. People don't like to leave their community when they're fire traumatised. So taking that pain point away where they could bring an empty container here, swap it over.
It's super practical.
It is, it's practical.
And we're talking like, you know, incredibly valuable
commodity, which was diesel.
Yeah, but it is, in terms of financially, at the scale of a state of a nation, is small financial.
That's right.
Financially, but huge impact.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you've got a landowner telling you that he had siphoned the diesel out of his ute to put into his generator so he could keep his fridge going, that's hard.
Well,
how then does he get to a service station to refuel? He can't. He can't go to the bank. Totally isolated.
And you can't ring, like...
No, that's right.
I'm just trying to get over the fact that there's no phone reception.
No, that's exactly right.
I'm lucky where I am, mainly working Ruffy, Crichton's Creek. We face Mercer's Hill and Mount Wombat, and we get reception.
That's right. I door knocked.
How could you even
That's how
function?
we communicated.
Like, we were in the fire and we were talking to each other on the phone because nothing else would work. I'm amazed. How do you communicate? You've got to physically go
People
and...
came to the hall. They spoke to neighbours. Yeah. Everybody checked in on everybody. Checking on your neighbours. Every chance I got. Have you spoken to this person? And I door knocked. I door knocked all our houses. I knew who was here, who knew who wasn't here. People were starting to come in through the Facebook page asking me about people, and then I would learn about circumstances, and then I'd like go, yep, okay, I'm on that. Yeah. You know, dropping off care packages, filling my car up with food, non-perishables, and driving. That's why I killed so many tyres. You know, driving up people's driveways to see the impact. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And then, you know, them in tears because, you know, I'm the only person that's turned up, and they've got a tree down that is come down that only to come over the top of their only standing good fence, because that's Murphy's Law. You know, and saying to them, okay, well then you need to give me your details so we can put you on the 4-wheel drive register, so we can get the 4-wheel drive clubs out to come and chop that tree up. And then the issue we had was they'd say a tree. You and I'd know what size that tree was, but then the 4-wheel drive clubs would turn up and go, holy moly, Sam, that's not a tree. That's a tree. Because it's got a girth that's, you know, 40 metres, you know, like, ooh. But it was just the practicality of things. You know, people didn't have drinking water. You know, I was asking for, you know, bottled water, and people were bringing me the little 5 keggers, which were fantastic. But 5 keggers don't last for families. So then we had to get the bigger ones, you know, and I had the Fawcett Angels right across Victoria sourcing items, and big corporate companies like Bunnings, who just did amazingly well to support us, said, oh, we can do better than that. We can give you the big family kegs of water. Oh, and by the way, you're not paying for them. which was lovely. So we were able to get those back here, and then, everybody that walked through the door, any more than 2 people in their household, they got a big keg, and then once I worked out that we could get the big portable filling machine out here filled up with water, people could fill those as well. They could fill the IBCs if they got one in through their address system or the allocation system, because water is a basic need, and the amount of water bottles that we went through, because Max, you overlay the lack of drinking water and you put a consistent week of 39 degrees, you got issues. People dehydrate. And my old farmers were out on sides of hills, fencing. They don't rehydrate. They're not thinking about looking after themselves with food or water. They're thinking about getting that star picket in so that they can run that wire so that they can get their cattle back. That's what was driving them. And we needed the water. And we were coming off a drought. People's dams were empty. Tanks were melted. Gutters were hanging off any type of shedding. We needed water for people. And you talk about resilience, like if that happened all again, it would be the same necessities would be needed. Water, fuel, connectivity. And at least now we've got a generator here at the hall that we can do that, and we can swing everything over in a very short amount of time. And just things like all the little local community groups that started to kick into gear that made meals and stuff like that. We had a very small freezer here. All of a sudden I had to think about additional freezers. So now we've been donated a huge big freezer. I have nowhere I'm going to put it yet. The other thing that I would like to see is that local government have 5 or 6 shipping containers that are full of, and get regularly inventoried and updated, that have 25 generators in it, have like 25 containers that can be filled with drinkable water, that might have non-perishable food that can come in through food share. And then those trucks, as soon as they can, are dispatched out to the hubs. Because if I'd had a shipping container that had been dropped off here, Max, that had generators, water, non-perishable items, dog food, maybe basic clothing or basic bedding, we could have been far more effective in that first 2 weeks. Now, don't get me wrong, we did the best we could. But we had some pretty strange requests that I couldn't fill. But we did the best we could, but it took us a couple of weeks. We've talked about this, like at local and state government, about sometimes things happen like that and people do put those shipping containers together, but then whole departments disappear, the knowledge is lost, but depots with councils don't often change much. Do you know what I mean? Surely there can be an emergency shipping container or 2 that can be put into a local government depot that has emergency use only all over it. Everything is inventoried. There is somebody at council that is in charge of that would check on it every 6 to 12 months to make sure it hasn't sweated or moulded or gone off in it, that it's topped up with changes in technology over the years. So the next time Fawcett is impacted, it's one phone call. Can you bring that container out? Yep, it's coming. It's going to take us 2 days to get to you, but we're coming.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, something that has...
Because why? Otherwise the onus has got to be put onto us. And we are looking as a hall at a shipping container that we can store stuff in. But, as a committee, we will talk about that, about, well, what else can we put into that so the next time this happens, we're not caught.
So I tallied up the amount of land that's been burnt in Victoria over the last 30 years.
You
and
did
the amount
not.
of structures. And then I divided it by 30. And I come up with the numbers, and I might be a bit out because it is off the top of my head, but I think we're at 174,000 hectares a year in Victoria gets burnt. And a few hundred properties and 6 to 7 lives lost. There are fires every year in Victoria
And floods.
and floods, and these organisations are often statewide. So anything we can help put in place locally and be understood and communicated, its value, is really going to benefit someone else. And that's something that crossed my mind
Yeah.
in this situation was, what if 20 kilometres to the north or south, the same thing happens again? And, oh gosh, I don't want to have not moved the needle with our preparedness. And it really, I think when we put it in that light of 175,000 hectares a year, a few hundred structures and 6 to 7 lives, this is something we should be seeking to be really, really good at managing, if not avoiding with preparedness, but certainly being rapid with that initial relief. So
You almost need like a rapid response policy. So once the disaster hits, whatever day it is, within the first 24 hours, within the first 72 hours, within the first week, this is what's going to happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that makes a big difference. If we raise the expectations fairly of how things might be responded to, and we enable an easier path with the initial response, we sort of set up a bit of a standard then, which people experience and they expect. So
Yep.
they go, oh, I've got to be ready. And we create a bit of a flow on here that perhaps outlives us. And if people leave, experienced people leave organisations or committees and so on, you don't entirely lose and reset to zero with
That's right.
the preparedness.
Even if there was a plaque that is put up in the hall that says, in case of disaster, there is a pod located at this. This is who you need to contact.
Yeah. And disaster, you know, I hate to think of it, but the world we live in is a very different world, and we think of all sorts of autonomous machines. So I'm going out on a bit of a limb here, but we might find that the same systems that were used in this emergency might become entirely irrelevant with changing world conditions and all sorts of things that may happen. You know, we could lose electricity with certain natural phenomenon. We could lose our communications, our logistics, and so on. So I think this is probably a first point of contact of preparedness in general. Fire's the main thing, and flood has its effects, but it's going to benefit us regardless of what happens.
This is my dog's barking.
Oh,
So I don't know what's happening over there. Yeah, I totally agree. Things do change. I know after the 2009 bushfires, I was incredibly privileged to go in and photograph Marysville. And when I gave those photos to local government, I gave them on a CD, a USB, and in hard copy, because I thought the technology is changing so much. And this time around, we didn't take a lot of photos. I mean, in the end I did. I got out and took a lot of photos because I thought in 10 years this is potentially going to be forgotten by a lot of people, because people are already telling me now that they've forgotten bits and pieces from 2009. Unless you wrote things down or whatever, it just gets lost in your head.
Yeah.
But if we did the preparedness in 2009 for this, you're right, a lot of that wouldn't have been applicable. Comms, water, but those basic things don't ever change, I don't think, in that first 72 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe in the next 20 years, you know, it won't be a shipping container comes out, you know, a whole heap of big drones just pick up whatever's needed and get it in, because they can get in past trees and burning sides and stuff like that. I don't know. Sometimes it's nice to apply academia and hindsight and, we can do this and this. But until you're actually in the situation, it's a very changing dynamic. And depending on so many different contexts and multi-layered happenings, it's hard to say, well, next time around we want this. I mean, we were adamant that we needed a generator because not having power diminished our ability, and we got around it. You know, we all lived off a freaking barbecue for the first 2 weeks. But I can remember people from Kinglake and Marysville saying, I can't even eat a barbecue sausage because that's all we lived on. And I thought, I don't really want us to be like that. But, we had gas-fired pie warmers and all sorts of different infrastructure this time around. I'm really trying to think about if we had this in 10 years, how different it would look. I would want to know that the hubs and the halls get financial assistance right off the bat. So they've got the confidence to say, we can go and get gas, we can go buy fuel, we can get a generator in if we need to, buy a new fridge, we can pay our bills and we don't have to worry about it. We just worry about assisting our community. Yep. Because so many other halls didn't do that fundraising that we did in that first month. And then that's had to come out of private pockets. Businesses have given up so much and it's not sustainable.
No. And it has a legacy effect too. Because
it does.
Like you refer to insurance.
Yeah.
That gets negated, so then...
It just goes on and on and on. So I think having a shipping container or a pod that comes with basic supplies in the first little while. We talked about, because hindsight's an amazing thing, what about, if, in those shipping containers, there's a mini little Starlink. Well, that's great, but I think what's going to happen now is most of the halls and any place that come online to help people is going to make sure that they've got a generator, that they've got a Starlink, that they've got all of that. Because they don't want to be caught out again. I'm not saying we weren't caught out, but it made things difficult. And I just thought, if I hadn't have had the men folk around to set up the generators, I'm talking at a really granular level now, I don't think potentially I could have got the generators started, but I had so many other things to worry about. My head was in 70 different logistical problems and trying to stop screaming cattle and dealing with old fart farmers that couldn't feed their stock, couldn't water their stock, had immediate needs as opposed to me worrying about bloody power for the hall. So I was very, very lucky that I had quite savvy operation vet assists here who had in past lives and still currently were electricians and engineers and whatever that could set the generators up. And even things like I didn't know it was a thing, but having whisper quiet generators, what the hell?
Yeah.
Because when you're at home and you've been fire affected and you're living off a generator for more than 2 to 3 weeks, the reverberation and the noise wears you down. It gives you a constant hum, it gives you a constant headache, constant reminder that your world's turned to crap. And here at the hall, from day one, I just said to everybody, it's got to be quiet, it's got to be a safe space, it's got to be, because people are coming in and their brains are mush. I don't want reverberation. It was like we were offered, because it was so bloody hot, portable air conditioners. And people were shocked when I said no. People were like, Sam, that's such a great offer. And I said, no, have you heard them? I'm really sorry. No. But if you look up, Max, we never had these beautiful 4 fans,
Yeah, right.
right?
They are beautiful fans.
They are beautiful. They're from the 70s by the look of them, but they suit our hall because it's old.
They're magic.
But you know what? When you turn them on and you circulate cool air, they don't make a noise. So sound, and especially too, because we've got so many people in the community now that, you know, they might have sensory issues, noises, sights, sounds, all of those things.
Yeah.
Kids, when they've been traumatised, are, you know, very adapt to picking up on vibes and stuff like that. And if they come to a place where there's so much noise and so much activity, they can't switch off, they can't chill out, they can't be in a safe space.
Yeah.
So thinking outside the square, you know, making sure that our little hubs have got all these things in place, because that's what you need. You know, and the fact that now, if there is another power outage, I can come over, any of my committee can come over, wheel out the generator, plug it in, come into the hall and switch a switch, and we're live.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking 5 minutes as opposed to a week of
And all the
stress
There's all
of
the other
daisy
things.
chaining and fueling, and oh, this is a diesel one and this is a petrol one. Where do we get the fuel from? Who's going to go in and get the fuel?
hands, we were filling up generators in Ruffian, we're getting hands covered in fuel and whatnot, and you're just like,
And the smell,
and you just sort of, it is what it is, but
it compounds.
it's something we can do.
That's right.
Is try and avoid those things, and I guess just thinking a little bit of having things feel a bit more homely than sterile. I think, I've sort of felt some of the government areas that have been set up feel quite sterile.
Oh, well, see, I
And
wouldn't.
it
Yeah,
feels
nah.
because you're only there because you might need something, and
Yeah,
if it's
nah.
a bit more comfortable, it makes a big difference.
See, even when we had all the services here, Max, I was quite adamant that they set up outside. This is a safe space.
Yeah,
I don't want people walking into people standing around in lanyards and uniforms. No.
yeah,
Out in the car park, underneath the trees, on the soft grass, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And they actually said to me that they had done it in other areas in Longwood and it worked quite well. Because I thought, I don't want people to walk in and go, oh God, this is where I met so-and-so last week and that didn't go very well.
and it sort of detaches things a little bit in a positive way.
Yep.
People can just focus on what it is they want on that day.
That's right. And there's a lot of people that were very confronted by how many people were here. So, in that first couple of weeks when we were having so many dinners and so many lunches and feeding whoever walked through the door, we set up all these other little spaces. So if people didn't want to sit in the hall, they could sit out on the deck. If they didn't want to sit out there, they could sit out the side here, or they could sit out the front.
Yeah.
They could go away from the noise. I've got many people in the community that might be returned vets. So PSTD, hopefully I've got the acronym right, is a real thing. So they're not going to want to walk into a hall full of people and noise. No. And it wasn't very noisy the first couple of weeks. There was no laughter, Max. You would have seen that in your own communities up there, that there was no laughter the first 2 weeks. But noises of chairs shuffling and people coming and going and seeing faces you didn't recognise, until you'd actually been around those people for a couple of days and then work out that they were going to be part of our community for the next couple of weeks because they were helping and that they weren't a danger, that they were here to help. You had areas that you could go and pull a chair up and sit with your neighbours because that community connection is so vital in that first little while of being disaster hit, because you don't have to justify your story. They know your story. They know you've been affected. I think that all comes into play. You have to be very observant and you have to read the room. And noisy machinery and stuff like that, and creating that homely thing where you can walk in. If you don't want to stay for a potluck meal, go out to the kitchen. The girls and the men will give you a little container to take home that you can heat or eat in the car. You can do whatever. Yeah, I think that's what people just have to be responsive.
Yeah. And that's a different. I've got a different area of specialty, based on my life experience.
Yep.
And I've sort of noticed how everybody attracts to the types of, the areas where they're sort of best suited, where their skill sets are. Based on what they understand, they see the gaps. And then different people like yourself and others, they are drawn to, we can't leave that not addressed. Well, let's find a solution, sort of thing. And to see that sounds a bit corny, but there is that team element. I think it's really positive because we're sharing the load in different ways, and some of us might be doing, in many ways, a lot more than others, or others might be doing more than some, from a perspective. But together, it creates a less crappy situation that won't be perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than being on your own.
That's right.
So it's a pretty special thing to hear that story.
Yeah, and I mean, I could sit here and say I did it all, right? But Max, that I was the driver, but I had teams behind me. That first week when a couple of people walked in and saw me, getting the lights on, moving the tables and saying, I've got to get milk out of these boxes and I've got to sort all that, and I've got 25 kilos of potatoes and vegetables here that's all got to go into the kitchen. They've got to work out how we're going to cook it. And I had a couple of community members say, Sam, stop. We will do that. You go and do something else. We will sort the kitchen.
Yeah.
And when the overs or the Operation Vet Assist turn up, and we had the amazing Leonie who has chefed and cooked for hundreds of people, just walk in and take that kitchen over, the relief was huge. And there was no expectation from our community that she would cook for us. She was there for the overs, right? But I kid you not, it didn't matter who walked in, they got a hot beef roll put into their hands.
Yeah.
And it was one less meal that somebody had to think about for that day, because our people weren't eating, they weren't drinking. They were so traumatised and trying to work out and navigate life, insurance, neighbours, stock missing, houses gone, accommodation, kids' needs. Unfortunately, we were in school holidays, but it didn't lessen the impact. And to have these little teams of people that put their hand up, that stepped up to help, was amazing. I look at our treasurer. Now, Sandra would normally have, on a good year, a turnover of, say, $20,000 to worry about, right? So we're talking about compliance, we're talking about accountancy packages, talking about all that stuff. Now, she went from zero to hero overnight because all of a sudden I was applying for grants. We were getting money donated. When she opened up that bank account balance after I put the message out through social media, and we got a $2,000 donation from France, with love from France. She rang me in tears and she said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Yep, buckle up, Buttercup, because it's going to get tricky." We were handling so many amounts of money coming in, and then I was asking her to talk to local suppliers and liquidate that money into vouchers, something tangible that when somebody walked in, I could give you a voucher for fuel or for food or for tyres, anything that you needed, we could give you, and Sandra had to do all of that, and navigate power that was down, navigate banking apps that weren't working, navigating the need to set up different accounts so that she could manage the money. Because, in leading up to November, we had grants in play that we'd applied for last year that we'd received money for. And as a treasurer, she had to separate that all out so that she knew in her heart of hearts that Sam wasn't asking for a fuel voucher that was coming out of the wrong allocated money. Because at the end of the day, we're a reserve committee of management. We've got accountability yearly to our land managers and every 3 years to the community. So she had to put her cape on and her gold bracelets and just get out there like a superhuman. And that puts a lot of pressure onto little communities and little committees.
Yeah.
And, I look at that was amazing. And, I look at our Secretary Ian, he's been secretary for nearly 50 years. This is his, he's coming into his 50th, 45. We do in terms of 3. So he's been secretary for a long time. Now, as secretary, he has a role that he has to do within the committee, and he's always taken on the rubbish and the recycling and stuff here. Now, he not only lost a generational home, but he was help putting out fires after the effect, navigating that he owns quite a few properties that were all fire impacted. And I said to him, our rubbish is going to go through the roof. Our recycling is going to go through the roof. And he said, it's okay, I've got it. You know, instead of doing 1 month runs to CDS to get rid of all the cans and convert that into cash, he was almost doing that weekly. He was here nearly every 3 days, reorganising tables and chairs and picking up rubbish. His partner came in, and her and Leonie, the chef, would fight in a lovingly way about who was going to clean the toilets, because, you know, we had gone from having maybe 500 people through a year to that in a very short amount of time, and repeat.
Yeah.
You know, we suddenly were getting toilet paper delivered on a pallet.
Yeah.
We were getting water containers delivered, and people were doing the right thing. They would drink it and go into the CDS bags, and then Ian would have to get that in. And we raised a lot of money through the CDS scheme in January, February. Ian was rubbing his little hands with glee. But that all took logistics.
Yeah.
And they had to do that in and around their own lives being totally disrupted. And then, you know, other committee members who kept saying, Sam, I can't commit here, were dealing with their own issues, and they were in constant contact. Sam, what about this? Don't forget about that. What about this? What about that? Because they were actually observing stuff, and I needed them, and they needed to be able to let me know, because that went into my observations. That was fed back into the advocacy into local and state government about all sorts of things. You know, one of our committee members is a bit of a wildlife officer, wildlife carer person, you know, and with other committee members, other community members, they were raising the plights of some of the burnt wildlife. Now, I hadn't even had a chance to even think about that. And they very quickly reached out to our local wildlife carers and rescue groups and organised specialised food to come in. They had a bit of a little tree, a messenger tree of their own. You know, oh, Sam, I'm just letting you know we've located 3 koalas and we're getting gum leaves out to them. Whoa. You know, people were coming in with injured animals, you know, and we had to suddenly negotiate getting those animals out of this to the wildlife carers. But, you know, we had to document things. Then there was pouches that came in one day, and I'm like, why is there a box of pouches come in? And that was for babies whose parents had perished, but they'd noticed, you know, a baby animal in a pouch, and then they could put them in a pouch by removing them properly and getting them to the wildlife carriers. You know, and this was all going on in the background. So there were all these little subgroups, I suppose, or little subcommittees that sort of suddenly formed, and people had little roles that they were doing. You know, same with the Fawcett Angels, you know, these 5 people from across the state that were bringing in the hard to get things. Like I had a local landowner say, I've lost all my shedding, all my tools, but I found a Makita drill in the back of my car, but I've got no chargers for. I've got no batteries for. So that would then be tasked out to the Angels, and they would go and get batteries and they would get chargers and bring them back up. everything from cattle licks to speciality food. You know, I've got people that had domesticated animals that were on really weird diets because of problems. You know, trying to get vets in. You know, we were very lucky. We had the Yarra Valley Seville vet come in. She was amazable. She worked out, I think, probably in week 1, week 2, that we have no vets in our region. Well, we do, but they couldn't get through. She did. She packed up her 4-wheel drive with everything known to man and got in and went door knocking from door to door, helped with people with burnt cattle feet and all sorts of burnt goat feet, dog inoculations, you name it, she did that.
Yeah.
You know, it was all these little things that had to happen in and around because our basics were gone.
Yeah. It makes me think we have this system called the market, you know, and it people get this energy, and we call that money, and it flows around in the market and satisfies need. But once we lose the, you know, systems, normal pathways are destroyed or obstructed. Plans, you know, we're going to sell stock, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. No, we can't.
All goes out the window.
All goes out the window. And how do we know the market's pretty effective because we enjoy the benefits of having choice and freedom. But it seems like really what we're trying to emulate is that basic need in a market-like situation, perhaps without the money side of it. So people are connecting the dots, you know, helping us get access to that thing. It's interesting to think about.
It is. It is, and just the adaptability that they bandy the word around resilience, but I just saw people adapt. You know, like when people couldn't drive down roads because of trees, I had people, rightly or wrongly, driving through properties to get to here,
and it's
to drop stuff off.
And you sort
Do you
of,
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how they got in those first couple of days because it was impassable, right? But they did, right? And I've got one lovely story I have to tell you. With all the roadblocks, there was probably about week 3 or week 4, I couldn't find anybody who could run into town and pick up a whole heap of things for me. And I thought, you know what? You haven't been out of your community. You need to get in the car, you lazy bugger, and go. And I went in and I had to pick up fuel, chickens, like rotisserie chickens, cooked chickens and bits and pieces from the supermarket and so forth. I had to do my own shopping because we had nothing at home. The kids and everybody were coming over here because it was the only place they could get fed because I was living here virtually. I was doing 18-hour days. And I went into town and I got all my bits and pieces and I thought, oh, God, you're really good. Car was chocker. Come back out through. And I'd got to the stage where I'd put my licence in my flip-down thing because I was getting asked and I thought, ugh, and it's now in the back of my phone. But I had it and I pulled up and it was 39 degrees. It was so hot. These Vic Pol guys were underneath a marquee at this stage because the first couple of weeks they didn't even have marquees. They were sweating buckets. Like they were just. I thought you're going to have Vic Pol people keeling over because the asphalt was hot, the roads are hot, tempers are high, people's like this. And I pulled up and they're all standing. I said, "Can I tell you something funny?" And they said, "Yes, please." And I said, "Okay." I said, I never ever thought that my life would amount to this. And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, in my car, these are the smells I have. Hot chicken." So I'm like salivating because I want to eat. But I said, in through that is this lovely wafted diesel. Anyway, so they were all laughing. But that's what my life was right down to at that point. My boot was full of water. The back seats of the car were full of diesel and fuel and petrol. And the front of the car was full of bread and milk and hot chickens, and that was my life. And rightly or wrongly, underneath all that was rounds and rounds of ammunition because I'd been gifted rounds and rounds of ammunition. to give out to the farmers that had put stock down.
Yeah.
So I also had that. So I was praying deep down that I wasn't going to get searched. I do have a gun licence and I understand all of the bits and pieces, but I thought, what a collection. That was my car. That was my life right then.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. And when you touched on that, something that did spring to mind that I observed was we had a lot of stock that were healthy or seemed healthy, then became not so well in the weeks after.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
We also had a proliferation of fox numbers.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
wild dogs, and it was a bizarre circumstance.
It was.
That
It was.
I haven't witnessed, and then they sort of assembled, different accounts and witnessed it. Sort of assembled into like packs, and were attacking what livestock
Were
was
left.
And
Yeah,
you
that's
think,
right.
Gosh, like a savage situation.
It was.
And
It's a
there's-
lot for
yeah,
landowners to put up with, Max.
Yeah,
Like the Department of Ag was saying things like, oh, we'll come in and we'll help you put your livestock down. But they couldn't get in. The
Yeah.
roads were closed.
and
And then how do you dispose of hundreds and hundreds of cattle and hundreds of sheep carcasses
Yeah.
when all your tractors have burnt?
yeah,
The amount of animals that my other half had to bury was just amazing.
no.
Do you know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's, we had neighbours that were putting down other neighbours' stock because we have a bit of a unwritten rule that if your stock have to be put down, 9 times out of 10, yes, it is the farmer's responsibility, but a lot of the times the neighbours, if they've got gun licences and are responsible enough, they'll say, you know what, Max, you don't have to deal with this. We'll do this for you. And that's how it happens in the country. But we didn't even have that ability in the first couple of weeks to get others to come in and do that. They couldn't get in. The roads were blocked. Trees were down. When you walk into a paddock where there are sheep on fire, you have to think quick. You have to put them out. You can't wait for some department or some people to turn up and do that. And a lot of the older farmers said, well, they're my stock, my responsibility. And that's how it was. It was incredibly hard. And then you're right with the foxes and stuff. Like the amount of foxes that I saw out during the day. Now, I grew up in an era where foxes really only come out at night for their chooks, right?
Yeah.
But they were walking through paddocks during the day, blazing. But they were starving and hungry too and had been burnt out.
And they're looking for opportunities.
Yeah, exactly right. And look at all the opportunities that were presented in the paddock.
Yeah, and it's
That's another thing another farmer has to go through. It's not nice.
and I guess that's where helping where we can and being prepared where we can
That's right.
all in the end does add up to something.
And I think that's that community spirit that I saw. Neighbours helping neighbours. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we live in a real grown-up world now. A lot of us don't like our neighbours. But you know what? People were putting that aside, Max, and they were helping.
We're all people, and
They were pitching in.
it's a funny world we live in where
It
we've
is a funny world.
sort of tried to simplify things in a way and pit each other against each other, but in reality we all need to eat and sleep and feel safe, and
Yeah, that's exactly right.
pretty similar in that regard.
That's exactly right. I saw people that had their houses survive, cooking and washing and doing stuff for neighbours that have lost everything. And that made me want to work twice as hard to make sure that I could get my community back on its feet,
Yeah,
because I saw that happening. And that pushes you. That says to you in a way that we're going to be okay because everybody's mucking in. Everybody's helping.
yeah,
And, I knew in my heart of hearts that it would take so long for government to immobilise. I'd seen it after 2009. And I thought, who's going to come and help us? We're a fairly remote little community. Our shire, like all shires, is not flush with funds. And I thought, we're going to have months, and we still have got months, where they're all scrambling to get funds, to get resources, to get happening. And thankfully now in July, we've got a really good team at Murrindini that have been immobilised. It's still not fully funded, which drives me up the wall, but I knew we had to be, in a way, sufficient. So it was around community-led recovery. So when all the suits and the clipboards turn up, like my community said, Sam, you know what's going to happen? I'm like, yeah. And I'm saying to my community, what do you want? No, just tell them it's community-led recovery and this is what we need. And that's what we did. And for some of the suits, it was very confronting to have somebody with, frizzy hair standing there going, because we all needed a haircut, and thankfully Sue came out and gave us a haircut one week. I can remember lining everybody up because we all started to look a bit furry. But I just thought, we know our community best. Our community know what they want.
Yeah.
And our needs were very simple at that stage.
Yeah.
Water, power, comms, food, fodder.
It's interesting that what you've just expressed there is something I've heard many different communities, that there was an acknowledgement that what might have been provided and a level of confidence that no, we need to do it this way. And I think that that's pretty telling because it's incredibly consistent. Actually, I haven't really come across anybody that's said the opposite. But it'd be nice to see the sport kick in
much
in
earlier.
a practical way.
Yeah, if
it probably sounds confusing to people because
if state and federal government had trickled the funds down to local government and said, you know your community's best, this is a pocket of money, you need to go out and meet with your community leaders, ascertain the need and flow through the money and make sure that they've got access, or you need to go shopping for them, whatever, to enable them to get their community back up on the ground using the community-led or community-enabled recovery principles, then that would have been absolutely amazing. But I knew that wasn't going to happen because, quite frankly, Max, we haven't learnt from 2009. We talk about it. What about all the subsequent events? We haven't learned about it. We keep doing inquiries, spending money, doing all of those things, rewriting policy. But the policy, a lot of the times, by the time it is put into place, it's not flexible enough for the next event that comes along.
it's sort of watered down to the point that it's confusing and just an opaque sort of
Who needs
rabble.
just 200 bloody pages on one little policy? Please just put it on one page. This is what's going to happen.
And maybe a bit of room to manoeuvre for ministers or whatever, for choices to be made.
That's right.
Does this seem like a situation where hubs are being organised? Well, this is an instance where we should match dollar for dollar for donations.
Or go out and ask what the hubs want.
Yeah.
You know, some of our halls and hubs just want a new oven,
Yeah.
or they want their septics done, or they want storage solutions. You know, I went out and got, through the committee in the community, permits for 11 shipping containers. Why do I want 11 shipping containers, Max, you ask? Because I've got 20 odd homes that have been lost, and those people have no long-term storage solutions. They don't want to put stuff on their properties. They've got no fences.
Might need a mower.
Yeah, that's right.
Somewhere to keep some fuel.
That's exactly
That's
right.
secure.
That's right. So I went and got the permit so they don't have to worry about it, because every time you put a shipping container in, you've got to have a permit. And that's all I asked state and federal government for, was for 11 shipping containers. And I've been told, basically, through roundabout ways, that the funding that potentially may be coming will not be covering assets. So I said, in my usual manner, that's okay. Just give me 40,000, donate 40,000 to the hall. The hall will buy the 11 shipping containers. We've already got the permits, the insurance, the security, the whole lot. We'll put them over there in the depot. And in 24 months or 36 months, when they're no longer needed, the hall will sell them and the money will go back into the hall for other bits and pieces for community needs. Because we don't know what our recovery is going to look like in 36 months.
Well, who knows
That's right.
what the world is in 36
Exactly
months.
right.
It's
That's
just a-
exactly right. The money won't go to waste. It won't go into, send Sam to Bali's account.
I think it's important to remember this is something that happened to the community.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
not a scenario where,
We didn't bring it on ourselves.
there's a problem over here
Yep.
and oh, it's grabbing our attention. It's a scenario where there's an obligation to be proactive.
And we're not asking for millions or billions.
Yeah. And at 6 months, in the scheme of, and you'd have enough experience that I don't have to let me know about circumstances from 2009 that may still be continuing now. 6 months is quite early on in the piece. There's a lot of things that can probably be done from a recovery space.
Well, they had hundreds of homes cleaned up in the first couple of months after 2009. I've still got homes in our road that haven't been cleared.
So
I drive past those homes 4 times a day.
Yeah. And
It cuts me every time to see that home not being cleaned up or removed. I worry about the asbestos that's been in that house that is now running wild amongst long grass and into water systems. I worry about old fart farmers that don't want to wait for clean-up because it's taken too long, who are out there in gloves and goggles picking that stuff up. And why do I know they're doing that? Because they come in here and they get the goggles, they get the gloves. I know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But they can't wait. It's taking too long.
Yeah. It's a very...
I've got people living in tents, Max.
Well,
We've had to swap tents out from those little cheap camping tents to bigger Scout army type tents that the canvas is not going to get damp or wet in our winters, because you know what our winters are like up here. They're harsh. We get down to minus numbers. We get fogs that don't lift all day. Have a look at today. Today is sunny. Yesterday was foggy all day. Do you know how damp it was outside?
So I've heard it described to me, you've got to understand, Max, that if we give somebody a prefabbed building, it's difficult to take back.
I've heard that too.
If we give a caravan, we can take it back. And I think to myself, again,
it's only until they've rebuilt.
This is imposed on those individuals.
Yeah.
And why are we caught up on
semantics?
Whether or not it's going to be there for 2 years or 20, it should be besides the point.
Does it really matter?
A number to call if you want it removed, sort of thing.
We're human.
It's bizarre. That is chicken feed investment for government.
Well, it's the difference between that person staying on their land, being connected to their community and wanting to invest back into their property.
And the tension this must create within family units and for couples would be immense. And
We've got families living in tents, Max.
Yeah. So how
we're talking about young families.
I don't know how we justify, we can't take it back, and it's
so you do it like a permit system.
Oh, but it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
We will give you this to you for 2 years and then we'll come back and chat to you in 2 years about how your situation's going.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard, Max.
And maybe, it's a bit messy and it's a bit...
and it's resource heavy, but,
it might be black and white. But it is a scenario where the need is there, and the alternative is things just get tougher and tougher for individuals. So it just seems like a basic provision. And I think it's quite heartless. But anyway.
I just think people have forgotten that we're human.
Yeah.
That we need those basic necessities. When you've got people that are refusing to leave their properties, that are living in woodsheds or tents, do you not think that they're going to be not able to move on if they don't get back to their new normal fairly quickly? So if I give you, hypothetically, a caravan that is fit for purpose, that's not full of mould, or if you've had a hip replacement that you can get up into it because we've given you a bit of a portable ramp, are you not going to push hard? Because you're not going to want to live in a caravan for 2 years, Max. You're going to want to have somewhere where you can sit and think, right, I can talk to my insurance company tomorrow, this is happening or that's happening, or I can slowly clean up the place to sell so that somebody else can move into my property and I can move on with my life. It's going to be far better than having somebody living in a tent or not on their property and doing nothing. I just, I don't know. I just think that people need to be given the opportunity, and not everybody, is going to push on and do. Yeah, there will be those people. I've got people after 2009 that still haven't done their fencing because recovery is not linear. Everybody does it at a different level.
We've got different
We
skills.
can't put everybody in the same box. Do you know what I mean? Everybody moves at a totally different level. I had people living in tents who were quite happy living in tents.
Yeah.
I've got people that are living in a tent that want to get out of the tent and they're pushing. They're pushing to get into something, but their insurance company and the cleanup has been so slow that they're forced to live like that for the minute.
It's just basic.
Some people, sorry Max to cut across to you, some people were offered accommodation far outside the region. Fantastic. But when the fuel prices went up, they couldn't afford to drive
To work.
from where they lived to their property to work on them. So that then forced them then to make that decision, I'm going to move out of my temporary accommodation and move back onto my property. But by doing that, I'm effectively saying to the government, I don't want help, but I do need the help, but I can't afford to drive back and forth.
If your temporary accommodation's costing $500 a week, or by the time it gets administered, it might be costing $1,000 a week. We're talking, $25,000 to $50,000 a year. That's a small accommodation on a property, and if we talk about grants between, I think it was $10,000 and $75,000
For primary producers.
would it not be responsible to say, clean up the mess, and this is a small provision for you to be on your property, and at that point it's dispatched to that individual and they take ownership
People had
of
to
that
write
asset.
10-year plans.
I'm not sure how you're meant to do that. Yeah. So
How do you do
seems-
that when you've lost the family home?
Yeah.
How do you do that when you've got a $100,000 fencing bill? It's almost like the policy's been written by people that have never owned land, run a business, or had a family trauma of losing things to disaster.
We're not talking about one person here or one
No.
family. We're talking about dozens and dozens.
And different ages, different backgrounds, different ethnicities,
Some just entering their work life,
different cultural needs.
some leaving it.
That's right, different abilities. People that are less ambient than others. People that might have a learning disorder. People that might be traumatised from a previous disaster. People that might be what they call sandwich parents. They have young kids at home, but they're looking after somebody with dementia. It's so complex. And that's, you were talking about case managers before, and I thought, God, I haven't even talked about that little puddle of fish. In week 4, we couldn't get case managers. I had people ring me in tears saying that they had rung the number to get a case manager. Oh, you won't be allocated for one for another 4 weeks. We don't have anybody at the moment. So the oversupply in week 4 was huge.
Oh,
Then we had case managers that were changing jobs, going on holiday. So I had people walking around in circles.
yeah.
And by week 5, it was looking pretty bad. So then I was having to call in to local government and to state government reps and say to them, can you escalate this family's needs? Can you escalate this couple's needs? Can you escalate this single's needs? They've lost their house.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, that takes precedent
And
over other things.
and
they
they
are living
They didn't
with
do it.
relatives on their floors.
Oh, gosh. And they didn't do it to themselves. It was done to them by circumstance. And
It
you
wasn't
just
a
think,
priority, and I'm like, it should be a priority.
well, it relieves all sorts of need, doesn't it?
Just
You got somewhere
even
to
if
put your
they
stuff.
had rung and said, hey, I'm Sam, I'm your case manager. Max,
Yeah.
I'm on leave at the moment, but in the meantime, somebody else is going to help you, and I'm going to touch base with you in a fortnight when I'm back.
Yeah.
This is the number that you ring. This is the number that you can text me if things go pear-shaped and you are not coping.
Yeah. And some people might need,
It's not hard.
some people might need
It's not hard.
a conversation
That's exactly
every
right.
6 weeks,
And then
some
they're,
people
and they're
might
okay.
need help filling out forms, whatever it might be, or
That's right.
being aware that there's something that might help them out
Can
there.
you imagine being told by your insurance company that you have to fill out an online form in PDF format, that you have to save it, do a digital signature and then send it back? And you are, I don't know, let's have a stab, 80 years of age. You've lost your house, you've got no comms, because there ain't no comms, and you don't want to go to your local library or your local community hub because you don't want other people knowing your business.
Yeah.
Staggers beyond belief. And yet I had other case managers out in their cars.
Yeah.
I've printed out the document. You need to sign here, here and here. I've printed you a second document. You are to put it in your folder. You don't have a folder? I have a folder for you and I have a pen for you.
Take a picture of it. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And unfortunately,
Sam,
everybody's...
I'm coming out to see somebody today. I can't tell you who it is,
Yeah.
but they need a thing of coffee, some water and a jacket. Can you help me? Yep, sure. Call in.
Yeah.
Here it is.
And
And here's a packet of chocolate wafers that the Lions Club have given us because cup of teas and chocolate always fix that moment of insecurity. So please take it with love from Fawcett. And off they would go.
Yeah.
It's simple, basic needs.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. You know, I've had people walk in and say, please don't ask me how I am, please don't hug me. I'm not in a good space. And, you know, it would break my heart because why? Their case manager hadn't returned their phone calls for 3 days. Their insurance company is treating them like a 2-year-old.
Well...
And we're all grown-ups, Max. It's not like we're 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I so appreciate you listening to my story, listening to our story.
Well, I'd like to do a lot more listening, and I'd definitely like to catch up again. I think we said sort of 6 months, but if it was possible, maybe in the next 3 would be good. And,
Not going anywhere. I've given the commitment to our committee and our community that we'll be here on Saturday mornings at least until Christmas time.
Yeah.
Because we've got a little bit more to do.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit more advocacy to do.
Yeah. No, I think there'll be opportunities, hopefully.
And I've got thousands of stories.
Yes. There might be books written about
There
this.
might be books.
Yeah.
We've actually talked about that. A picture book, we think, for the first thing with some quotes. That's about it.
Yeah.
Because I've documented everything. I've done all my reports and stuff because I think it is important that people's stories, not their names, but people's stories are told. Because at the end of the day, the only people that can make the difference are the people who are listening, who are writing policy. And the policy has to be well developed. It has to be reflective of what's happening on the ground. And I've met with many ministers that do have good policy backgrounds, and I think, where is the policy?
This is a mismatch between
There is a mismatch.
reality and maybe in other parts of the state or country what they think is happening. There's a bit of a different reality on the ground.
It is a very different reality on the ground, and I think I've been fairly lucky in convincing most of the visitors that we get here in the hall to get in the car with me and come around. You can drive if you want, I can drive, but I can talk to you about the stories. I'm not talking about names, not talking about identifying properties, but I can talk about scenarios, things that have happened. Because our stories, if they're not told, they get lost.
They're gone.
And that's why I was so incredibly proud of everybody that put their hand up to talk at the inquiry, everybody that gave feedback, everybody who was too frightened to talk at the inquiry to come to me, tell me their story so that I could write it down, include it, because a lot of the times their story was very similar to their neighbours or similar to somebody else. And there's common themes. And unless government hear these common themes and understand what's happening on the ground, how can they govern? How can they write policy? How can they allocate grants? How can they make a difference? They can't. There's that disconnect between reality
An incredible disconnect.
and Spring Street policy that doesn't fit regional areas. Don't even get me started on that.
We're not actually, it's important, we're not actually talking at scale of government about
No,
a
that's
massive
right.
amount of money. We're talking about deeply impactful offerings of support that is totally fair and reasonable. But that's not happening.
And I'm not too sure why.
Yes.
I wish I had the answer for you, Max, but I'm not in politics.
Yes.
All I can do is make sure that our community stories are told.
Yeah. And have their back as you have.
That's exactly right.
the
You can pick on me. I don't care what you talk about me or say about me, but you pick on my community, you're going to be in a world of trouble. And it's only through writing. I'm not aggressive in that way. I do lose my poop and I do drop the F-bomb, but usually it's out of frustration of people not listening,
Yeah.
not understanding that they're making decisions that do not fit
Yeah.
community outcomes.
Need to find a way to cut through.
That's exactly right. Exactly
Are you happy
right.
if we end it there?
I am happy to end it there. Thank you, Max.
Cool.
It's been
Thanks
a
so much.
privilege to chat to you.